Good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session for this Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022. It's 9:02 a.m. My name is Ty Menser, Vice Chair of the Board. Commissioner Gary Edwards, present through Zoom, and our Chair, Commissioner Mejia, will be joining us in a few moments. For virtual public attendance, you can follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. We're in session scheduled till noon. We'll have a midpoint break. And let's start with item 1. Well, first of all, let me get a sound check. Commissioner Edwards, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. I can hear you if this thing has a little bit of a delay.
No problem. Very good. We hear you well. So now
Okay,
item number 1 is homeless strategies, and I don't see a homeless strategies representative on the big board. So maybe we move on.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to that item if we get one of our public health folks on board. So we're going to review the draft agenda for this evening's meeting. This is our evening meeting for November. It will start at 6 p.m. and be right here in room 280 of the building 1, where we will continue to meet for the rest of the year. And the meeting will be called to order at 6. Pledge of Allegiance will be led by myself, and we will have approval of looking at the November 22nd agenda and approval of board meeting minutes from, and there's a blank there.
I'm sorry, I'll take that off.
We need to remove that. We don't approve minutes.
There won't be any minutes to approve. Okay, very good. So we'll look at the agenda for approval, and then we'll move on to a presentation, which is Superior Court Proclamation for National Adoption Day.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. You reviewed this item last Friday, and I don't know if Commissioner Rose had the chance to listen to that conversation, but this is an opportunity for the board to proclaim November 18th, 2022 as a National Adoption Day in Thurston County. It's a little bit of a retroactive action since we did not hold a board meeting last Tuesday on the 17th of November. I believe on last Thursday, on the 19th, there was a adoption day in juvenile court, and some of us had the opportunity to attend. I can probably give you my personal view of that event. It's just a heartwarming event where you see kids in need. They have been adopted. There were seven adoptions they conducted last Thursday in juvenile court, and a total of 10 kids were adopted in permanent parents and houses. So great, and this again a little bit retroactive for you to consider, and it will be very appreciative if you can help us on that.
Commissioner Edwards, anything regarding?
Nothing yet, thank you.
Okay, very good. You can. Okay. Very good. Then we will look at. Okay, I see Keely's on board, so let's maybe double back before we go to item 1. Let's double back to our homeless strategies update. Keely Marino, good morning.
Good morning, commissioners. Good to see you. Just have a brief update for you. Last week on Thursday, Tom Webster, myself, Selchus, and new staff member Alex Purse participated in the listening sessions or public information meetings held at Lacey City Hall regarding the joint purchase, or not the joint purchase, but the purchase of the Days Inn or the hotel at 8200 Quinault Drive in Lacey. That is the hotel that for the right-of-way initiative is being purchased directly, a contract between Commerce and the Low-Income Housing Institute. Low-Income Housing Institute executive director and staff were there. It was, they were excellent meetings or good conversations, great questions came from the public, and I believe they are available on Lacey's City Council YouTube channel if anyone is curious and would like to watch those. There was one that occurred at 3 p.m. and one that occurred at 6 p.m. But just really well organized, and appreciate Lacey's organization on that. Other than that, we're just moving forward with our point in time count for 2023. Our planning is happening in earnest. We've got some pretty exciting conversations going on around events that may be occurring for certain subpopulations. I'd be glad to provide you with a lengthier overview of what we're attempting to do this year for the point in time count at another time, if that is something that you wish. I'd be glad to set aside some extra time for that. And then I don't think I've mentioned that our Balance of State Continuum of Care applied for the youth homelessness demonstration project, which are federal funds that come into communities to work to end youth and young adult homelessness. So Balance of State did apply for the first round several years ago, and the most rural communities in the Balance of State Continuum of Care did receive those funds. And the remainder of the Balance of State Continuum of Care, including Thurston County, were awarded YHDP funds for this round of funding. So what that means is the Balance of State Continuum of Care will probably put together some a NOFA for that effort. But that means that we've got the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Project happening in Thurston County. We've got the Anchor Community Initiative happening in Thurston County, also an initiative to end youth and young adult homelessness, and the Built for Zero initiative in Thurston County, focusing on ending homelessness for those who are chronically homeless. So a lot of really exciting initiatives happening all at once. So just wanted to let you know about that. And otherwise, I will be glad to take any questions you might have.
No questions.
Okay. So on that last point, Keely, so did I understand Continuum of Care applied, and I assume by your comments, we were successful and we're receiving certain amount of resources for these demonstration projects, and how much money is that?
I know for the Built for Zero, that is actually fiscally handled with Providence St. Pete's. And so I don't know the exact cost. That's actually not an award. That is something that Providence St. Peter's is sponsoring fiscally for us to participate in. However, we did just apply for $100,000 for 2 years for a Built for Zero coordinator. So we'll be hearing if we receive those funds. The Anchor Community Initiative is mostly privately funded, if I remember correctly. Though how that looks is when a community is awarded to become or invited to become a member of the ACI, it comes with technical assistance and funds to hire a youth coordinator as well as an ACI coordinator in our community. And also some extra funds that go towards capacity building within our system to help flesh out like a name-by-name list for youth and young adults. So it's not necessarily one chunk of funds. It's a little bit different than that. I don't know the exact total right now. I'm definitely glad to get that for you. And the Youth Demonstration or Homeless Demonstration Project, I believe the Balance of State is kind of holding that award, and they're figuring out how to disperse. So I'm not quite sure how all of that will occur. I'm thinking it will be competitive between the communities, or it could be formulaic. I'm not quite sure yet.
When you say ACI coordinator, what does the ACI stand for?
Yes, that's the Anchor Community Initiative.
Anchor Community?
Anchor Community. It's a part of Away Home Washington. So Away Home Washington has a part of the work that they do is to choose communities to be anchor communities. It's a competitive process to be chosen, and Thurston County was chosen in 2021 and started working with the Anchor Community Initiative at that time. So we're coming up on a year.
And who chooses those communities?
So the staff and members, and I think the board members of Away Home Washington. So our community presented a collective application to Away Home Washington. We went through
Washington.
Away Home Washington. And then we had 2 interviews, I believe, with the Anchor community staff, and then they deliberated amongst themselves and chose Thurston County.
County manager, anything? Okay, thank you, Keely.
Thank you.
All right, let's then drop back to our agenda for this evening. We're on to an opportunity for the public to address the board is first, and then county manager's update.
I don't have any updates for you this afternoon, commissioners.
Okay. Consent agenda, items A through D. Item A is Public Works item, a resolution reclassifying a position.
Thank you, Commissioners. This particular item, this is the reflection of when a vacant position becomes available. There is always an opportunity. I encourage every office and department to go through the assessment of the needs of that particular position to ensure the needs of that department are met. There's always I believe, an opportunity there's always an opportunity to reassess the needs of the department, and this is the result of that assessment. So the department is requesting for you to consider reclassifying an administrative, a senior office assistant to administrative supervisor. This really will bring a little more structure to provide administrative services to the department. As you know, the department has over 200 employees, and the administrative services they provide to those employees are in need to have a leader in that organization. So the proposal would result in an increase in its salary from $4,837 per month to $6,174 per month. That would be just about $1,337 per month, or 28% increase. This will not have an effect on the general fund. This will be covered by the public works budget, which includes many different funds associated with it, solid waste and the road fund. Any questions?
Commissioner Roberts?
My only question would be, at this time, would it automatically start out at that higher
No, sir.
rate? There'd
No.
be a wrap up at some point.
So
right?
what I give you is the worst impact to the budget.
Yes.
But that impact will not materialize right away. It will
Might be a
materialize
few years
first
down the road.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
even the town scale may increase based on the cost of living they may be affected by it.
Thank you.
But thank you for the question.
Commissioner Mejia?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. I don't either, so let's go to item 3B. Human Resources, changing address for the Risk Management Office for filing tort claims.
For your consideration, this is a result of offices moving to the 3000 Pacific, also known as the atrium. And is a requirement by the board taking action in a resolution changing the address where the risk management offices will be located. And this is the resolution for you to consider where the risk management offices move to the 3000 Pacific Avenue. Last week, I believe the conversation was whether you need to take an action on every single office department. No, this is very prescriptive. And I don't expect for you to take any other formal actions, legislative actions to change the addresses of offices of the department. You have already taken an action as to where and when the board will meet through the resolution you passed a couple of months ago. And that includes the atrium, the office for the board to meet beginning on January 1st, 2023.
Questions, Commissioners?
No questions, thank you.
Let's go to 3C, Public Health, Social Services.
Pass the baton to you.
No, it's okay, you can.
I think she's,
Oh, she's looking in.
just let me know. Public Health and Social Services, Amendment Number 1 to contract to perform governmental activities between Thurston County and the Conservation District.
Yeah, you had a good conversation on Friday about this particular item. The Conservation District provides services related to the North County Tech Program, and this has been funded in the last couple of years. This particular contract that we have with the Thurston Conservation District expired on December 31st, 2020. And for many issues related to this delay, the department is requesting for you to extend that contract to September 30, 2022, just to cover all the activities. The Thurston Conservation District has already been completed and done. In a way, this is an administrative step the board may consider I think it was a great conversation and related to the department and staff needs to make sure that any activities by a third party, in this case, the Thurston Conservation District, they perform on behalf of the county, there needs to be under the umbrella of an approved contract. So this a little bit outside of that norm, but certainly it's something that we can improve in the process as we move forward.
Commissioner Woods?
I'm curious why there aren't any dates associated with this. You mentioned some dates, but there's nothing here.
Oh, yeah, we can add to September 30th, 2022 on the
I mean,
action.
just for
Yeah.
clarification
Yeah.
for the future.
Yeah.
That's it for me, sir.
So we had to extend the date to September 30th. Thanks, sir.
I had several questions about this contract last week and I guess my follow-up question is going to be, you know, was this something having to do with the issues that we're having with financial services where, you know, we're not looking at contracts? Like, where was basically the part where we missed this?
That is an excellent question, and I am not prepared to give you that answer at this point, but certainly something we need to explore. My sense is perhaps a combination of financial services help to the department, and as well as maybe the COVID-19, you know, play a role in making sure that we didn't track this contract to that level of detail. But Art is
Art
here
just
to
turned
provide
on his
additional
video,
perspective.
so
Yep.
I'm gonna go ahead and call
Would
on
you like to
Art.
add any additional perspective on that, Art?
Good morning. Yeah, I'm Art, starting with Thurston County Environmental Health. And as Ramiro indicated, there was a combination of things that basically allowed us to miss this. It was the COVID work, staff being reassigned. We had illnesses in the office. We had our contracting concerns that we've talked about before in other venues. And basically, we missed a date on this stuff. In the meantime, we were undergoing negotiations with Department of Health and Conservation District to extend the contract, and certainly didn't intend for it to lapse, and that's why they continued to do the work. So it was, I guess you can just say it was a mistake. And after reviewing, Stuart Whitford, our program manager, recognized this when he was hired a year ago, started working to get this resolved, and this was the amendment before you is what we believe is the best way to resolve this after working with the Department of Health and our prosecuting attorney. So Jane Futterman is very helpful with this. And so this is the mechanism we've come up with because we do want to be transparent about all this.
Thank you. I guess my follow-up question is what's going to be the gap of the services that we're no longer going to have because of this?
This contract was always due to expire September 30th. The work with the Conservation District, at least when we're providing funding, it's based on grants. We don't have any current grants that'll continue that funding. We will continue to look for opportunities to work with the Conservation District because they do provide a vital service in working with property owners to make sure that animals and ag practices are being done in a way that both works for the farmer as well as protecting water resources. But we don't have a current agreement now. We do understand that the Conservation District will be applying for some of the National Estuary Program funding that's coming available later this year. There's actually an application period that's on right now. So we'll support them with that. But right now we don't have an outstanding agreement or a current agreement with the Conservation District.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then I'll work with Stuart to tinker with the language on the AIS.
Just to add the date of that you're requesting, that would be great. And Jamie can help on that.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, want to pick that up?
Okay. Okay, and
Moving on to item 3D, exception to the management and technical pay MTP plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is related to some of the recruitment efforts. We need to be a little more flexible, at least from my words. And the MTP classification, which is the management and technical plan, pay plan, does not include any relocation costs when a new employee comes out of state. And that requires specific action by the board to deviate from that. The at-will plan, the at-will positions, they do include an allowance for relocation costs. So this particular request is for you to consider allowing the relocation cost, moving cost for $3,000 for the project manager who joined us from Texas. And this is the request that we have for you. Also provided some information to the board on Friday that I'm working on bringing a couple of policies for you to consider. One is a recruitment policy. We will be addressing this, and also a retention policy. They also we're working with HR. But again, this is a one-time, and we are required to review on a case-by-case basis this particular request for your consideration. Any questions?
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, I don't have any questions, but I think it's a tool necessary in today's environment, I mean, for recruitment.
Right. Absolutely, and you will see, this may be a good opportunity to bring you up to speed on the public health director. We have pretty good interviews today. I'm trying to organize a follow-up conversation with Commissioner McHugh and Commissioner Edwards with the top candidate. And within that context, I will be asking the board to authorize a sign-in bonus. And that was part of the umbrella in which we went out. And I think that proved to be helpful in a way, I don't know. But so, and this is just, and it's just the nature of the workforce, especially in very critical positions, very difficult positions to fill. As a staff, we need to be a little more flexible, and this is how we bring this particular item for your consideration.
Questions, Commissioner Munson?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, I had some questions last week and those got answered, so no further questions for me. Moving on to department items 4A, 4B, 4C, and 4D. And these are voucher lists, approval voucher list from the week of October 3rd to the week of October 24th.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Those 4 items, the reason as to why they're department items, each one of those voucher lists, they have payments related to the Atrium. Item 4A for the week of October 3rd is items related to the Atrium expenditures on page 83. Item 4B for the week of October 10th, expenditures related to the Atrium, they are located on page 25. Item 4C for the week of October 17th, expenditures related to the Atriums are located on page 24. And item 4D for the week of October 24th, payments related to the Atriums are located on page 22. Any questions?
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, it looks like we're getting closer to an official move, and at that time, we'll be in another location and we'll have to consider funding to make that happen. I've been opposed to this all along, and but I recognize that it's the democratic process, so things will be changing in January, I guess.
Yeah, the first formal meeting at the new location for the board, as stated in the resolution, is January 1st, 2022. But physically, your offices have been moved over this past weekend, so we're going to be commuting between this place and the Atrium for the next.
Getting close to the conclusion.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Commissioner Munson,
No,
questions?
nothing. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to item 5A from the Commissioner's Office, set a public hearing for 5 Commissioner District boundaries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For your consideration is for you to waive the 20-day public hearing and for you to consider setting a public hearing for December 7, 2022. That is a Wednesday at 3:30 in the afternoon for you to receive public testimony on the proposed boundaries for the 5 commissioner districts. A little bit of history, and I will elaborate a little bit more this afternoon in my presentation to benefit the public. This journey started back in, I believe, July 2021, when the Port of Olympia was contemplating putting in front of the voters a proposition asking to increase the Port of Olympia representation of the commissioners from 3 to 5. Through that conversation was a joint meetings between the Port of Olympia and the Port of County Commissioners, and where we resulted in a joint resolution to work together in moving forward and asking the voters to move to approve the representation from 3 to 5 on both commissions. And that was predicated on the population. The Port of Olympia does not have the requirement to meet any type of population thresholds, but the county does. And the county needed to be above 300,000 in order to be in the position to ask the voters to consider increasing the population, the representation of the commissioners from 3 to 5. That occurred, the latest numbers that we had was 300,500. The result of that, the Board of County Commissioners, as well as the Port of Olympia, submitted to the county auditor to place 2 propositions. They was voted here and 3 weeks ago on the general election. So far, I know the certification of the election is not done until November 29 next week, but it's the likelihood that both propositions will pass based on the latest numbers that we have seen. The county's proposition was a little bit higher, close to 11% margin, and approving this request, and also I believe the Port of Olympia has increased to just about 1.5% on a positive way. So that aligns to the schedule that we set out when we embark on this parallel track of a redistricting committee, with the chairs of the commission, Board of County Commission, as well as the chair of the Port of Olympia Commission, serve as the chairs moving forward and looking for alternatives to see how the 5 districts will be. That conversation led to the Board of County Commissioners weighing in what we call option C. And that option is the one what is moving forward to receive public testimony on September 7th, 2022. Depending on the public testimony, we'll be bringing an action for you to consider on December 13th for you to formally approve the 5 commissioner districts. And the reason as to why this is timely is because we have worked with the Port of Olympia as a requirement. They need to have that approved before the end of the year. And we have worked in tandem with the Port of Olympia to achieve that objective. Any questions?
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, so we're gonna waive the 20-day public hearing. Does that mean that we're still required a certain time, like is it 10 days?
10 days.
Should that say that we're gonna have a 10-day? I'm just asking that as a question. I don't-
So let me pull it back. That is not a requirement
Okay.
for you to hold a public hearing on this
Oh.
particular matter.
Okay.
But I think it's prudent
Okay.
for you to consider setting a public hearing, hearing testimony on this particular very important item.
Yeah, and then maybe just as a further explanation, at 400,000, when the county reaches 400,000, it becomes mandatory under state law without a vote of the people.
Yeah, that is correct, and in fact, the county that has gone through that process is Spokane County.
And it goes to a charter. It's not just doesn't go to 5 commissioners. It's charter,
No,
right?
No, it's all by
It's not a
commissioners.
charter,
It's
but
not a
it
charter.
does change the scheme to where each commissioner is elected only by their own
By their
district.
own
Okay.
That's the
So it's kind
closest
of-
to the
Okay.
charter.
That's the closest, yeah. It changes the dynamics, but it's still, because by understanding, I worked for 20 years in a charter county. And the charter is a little bit different because it looks at the makeup of the overall county government. Includes the sheriff's office, the assessors, the treasurer, and this is very narrow.
To the commissioner. And it's
very narrow
important.
to the commissioner
And then
representation.
it's really important because there's a lot of laws where it says, if you're a charter county, you do all this, and if you're not, you do all that, and you don't become a charter county by virtue of the Spokane law. You're still a non-charter
Yeah,
county.
but that's a good differentiation, Madam Chair, because when you reach a 500,000, is 400,000 is 5 commissioners without the voters' approval, and then becomes a more district elected commissioners.
Just as maybe a clarification, you might know the answer to this. Do the port commissioners continue to be elected countywide under this proposal?
Yes, and if I may, there is an interesting piece of the law. The port commission, if they go to 5 commissioners, they have the option to elect the 2 new commissioners at large. But I believe the port commission choose to go along with the board of county commissioners. So yes, it will be during the elections, on the primary elections, it will be, those candidates will be nominated to the general election, and the general election, the whole county will vote for.
Even for the port? And then I think my last question is, we're going to have staggered terms for the new 2 commissioner districts, and I'm wondering, would it make sense to put in there, or do we even know which district is gonna be?
Yeah, and
Is that gonna be included in this particular discussion for the public?
I will highlight that, and again, the statute is very prescriptive. Position number 4 will be elected, well, the 2 positions, they need to conduct elections next year,
Yes.
November of next year. Position number 4 will be elected for 1 year, and position number 5 will be elected for 3 years. And that way will align to the stagger.
And the selection to name it as position 4 or position 5, is there anything in there? I mean, so we just kind of picked a spot and that's the way we moved forward? I don't care, I just want to know.
When we move forward on the many different options that I work with the
Yes.
board, we have the position number 4 to be South County and position number 5 to be in the North County. And I think, no reason behind that thought process, but if you look in terms of the staggering election, it probably makes sense.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's it.
But to answer your question, you absolutely have the latitude to go, you have the latitude to change the boundaries, you have the latitude to change the designation of the districts, you have a lot, just.
Well, we made an agreement with the port, though, as we moved into this, to do this in conjunction with them.
Yeah.
Just,
And the district committee did a great job.
yes, I want to say they did. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, Madam Chair, the chair of the port commission, they managed the redistricting committee very well.
Listen to a lot of input and there were a lot of changes. I mean,
A lot of input.
I can just say the map that we ended up with was not the map we started with, so there was a lot of discussion and input and revision, so that's good.
Yeah, and that was, I believe, good feedback from South County. And I believe the map that is, if you approve having the public hearing, I hope you do, is really the representation, the reflection of including all the feedback and from the public. You'd like to?
Yeah, we've got a lot of public feedback. It was great to see that engagement because we started out with this draft map of like, okay, kind of similar to what, and it was interesting just to kind of really hear people, and there were a lot of good questions on, you know, South County representation from, you know, some residents and other comments really, really engaged. And so, you know, I'm kind of happy with the product we ended with, but if there's some, you know, I feel like there's always things that maybe we didn't see in the process. We were trying to make sure everything was ready with the timeline that we were given, which wasn't very much time. It was kind of tight.
It was pretty tight.
It's pretty tight, so, and then of course trying to, Ramiro, I think it's important because this question came up at the Lacey City Council on, you know, we were following with keeping commissioners within their own districts. That question came up at the Lacey City Council on, you know, why we were drawing our boundaries, you know, with current city commissioners, and maybe explaining that, you know,
Okay.
we have to follow, like, that was state law, like, there was no, we couldn't draw a sitting commissioner out of their
And
district.
maybe I can highlight the main objectives that the redistricting committee agree on from the beginning, and the maps follow that objectives, which includes what you just stated, Madam Chair.
I mean, I will just say that I think that you could have had a situation where the location of the court commissioner versus county commissioner would have led to an irrational map, but that did not, in my opinion, that did not happen. You might have landed on the exact same map without that limitation whatsoever. It's that logical, and we were able to accommodate the commissioners in logical chunks in a way that didn't create any, in my opinion, irrationalities. You know, like if, so I'm very pleased by that, because I was a little concerned that we might be in that situation where we had to do something that wasn't ideal because of where the sitting commissioners live. But that was very well deftly accommodated by the committee. And
Right, and I don't want to pick on Commissioner Mejia's district. That was the
hardest one.
That was the most challenging district to balance.
Well, you would have thought, I mean,
Oh,
Commissioner
yours.
Edwards and Commissioner Ayala, but you would have thought, oh wow, they're on the opposite ends of the county. But the way
Because the density of the population
the
is
way
the
it
next-
comes across the Nisqually River and connects, it really is logical.
Yeah.
That district, I think so.
Yeah, I think the District 2, I think really encompasses a good area, and I don't want to, pump our chest, but I think the district maps are a good balance on everything they heard.
And then these are still district in the primary and countywide in the general, so. Okay, any further questions?
I would say the one nice thing about this versus waiting to the 400,000 and it becomes mandatory without a say, the voters did have a voice in this, which is always beneficial.
Absolutely, and the voters trusted Thurston County to move forward into the future.
Trust in government, Commissioner.
I thought I might hear something.
I had to say it. Every now and then we see a flash of it. Let's live up to it.
Okay, community planning and economic development, items 6A and 6B are connected. The first one is 6A, ordinance for adoption of A-8 habitat conservation plan, and 6B, a resolution proposing to adopt a mitigation fee schedule for the Thurston County Habitat Conservation Plan.
Long journey, commissioners, and this journey started back in 2014, if I may, when the federal government was contemplating listing endangered species, particularly Mazama pocket gopher subspecies in Thurston County. The result of that was a little bit interesting process that I'm not going to be, retelling the story as to some of the interim regulations the board approved, some of the hard work associated with CPED, staff with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, a lot of coordination, a lot of history, and a lot of experiences shared by individual citizens as to why this is so important to move forward. And through the discussions the board had, this is not perfect. This is not, something that everybody's happy, as you see from many lens. But I believe this is the best way to get out of the box the federal government imposed to Thurston County. And getting out of the box, I believe, is a benefit to the residents of the county as a whole. And I'm particularly excited to bring those two last items for your consideration, because this is nothing but a way to move forward, to provide the services that we're required to do to the residents, and in this particular case, provide the services to our residents with the conditions the federal government has imposed on us over the last 8-9 years. So this first item 6A, is for you to consider amending the Thurston County Code, Title 17, and as well as Title 24 and many chapters associated with that. And item 6B is actually is an ordinance, not a resolution. We'll change that on the title, and where you consider approving the mitigation fees to implement the capital conservation plan and the incidental take permit associated with it. Josh is here in the audience. If you have any questions, well, it's Chris Chapeau via Zoom. And I'd like to take this opportunity to really say thank you to you, Josh, for your leadership, to you, Chris, for your leadership, and the commitment to move forward, and the commitment to get to the finish line is just remarkable. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, questions, Commissioner Albert? On either item 6A or 6B?
No, I really don't have questions per se. I think there's probably still issues that are gonna come up as time goes on. I've said this before, I feel this is extortion by the federal government against the citizens of Thurston County, but I commend the county manager for his box analysis, because I think it tells it just as simply as we can. We're stuck, and this is the only way we can help folks make that adjustment to deal with this particular problem. And we'll see what comes of it someday down the road in the courts, possibly. Maybe this will bring even that to a head and to me, it's a fairness issue, because I really do feel we're preserving species for all of our public, not just the poor citizen that inadvertently happens to own a piece of property that's adversely affected. And that has always been my objection to this, that it's really not fair, because we're doing something for the whole population, not any one of the property owners. And I think it misses the point there, but I don't see a way out of the box without doing it. So I will be voting probably under protest in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Menzer, questions?
No questions.
No questions for me. I think we've had a lot of discussions about this, not only for the time I've been in office, but many years prior to. And, I think we're all in agreement. We're in a box, and this is the best way to work under the confines of that box. And not to say that this isn't amendable, right? I'm pretty sure there's gonna be things that maybe we didn't realize that are gonna come forward in the coming years, and but I think just as a starting off point, this is a good spot, and then we'll learn as the process starts and we see it in action and amend it as things come up.
Maybe I'd comment one other thing. I'd like to thank Josh and his crew for running around inside that box for a while, finding a way out. Thank you.
Thank you, and, oh, please.
Just one more thing, Josh. I want to thank your team too. And, you know, this is a massive, you know, accomplishment, and we're all going to take a deep breath and exhale. But acknowledge that your team still has work to do, right? Acquiring land, administering the program, adaptively managing those lands in accordance with this law. So there's a lot to this plan, and it's gonna require continued sustained effort of Josh's team and the county. So thanks for doing this for the people of Thurston County. I mean, it's, you know, it's a benefit to them, and a lot of hard work for you, and a lot of headache over the last longer than I've been on the board. So, you know, thanks to your team. Thanks.
I appreciate that, Commissioners, and I think the chair got it just exactly right. This is the starting point. Once you approve the implementing these codes, the whole process really boiled down for the applicant is going to be avoid. If they can avoid building on the habitat that's covered, it will cost them $0. If they can minimize, it'll cost them less dollars. And when they mitigate, the concern that we've heard a lot is about the cost. And we've broken that cost down at a price per square foot. At the low end, it's about 30 cents a square foot for impacted area. At the high end, it's about $1.18 per square foot for impacted area. And so just recognize that through the leadership of the Board of County Commissioners and the direction you provided staff to help cut the costs for the applicants and citizens of Thurston County while protecting the environment and allowing building to proceed. Nobody likes a new permit, but this is a logical path forward, and I appreciate the hard work of the staff and the direction of the board to get us here. So thank you very much.
And that's impacted area, not the size of your land.
That's correct.
Not the size of your total project.
That's right.
But the size of the unavoidable impacted area.
You get to decide what area you impact. That's the area that you mitigate. So it's avoid, minimize, then mitigate, and we'll help you through that entire process.
But also, as a matter of clarification, if a resident of the county perhaps doesn't like what you just described, they do have the option to go and secure their own habitat conservation plan with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So that continues to be an option for a resident of Thurston County.
Okay.
That's it, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and next question is ordinance for adoption of the A24 Emergency Housing Ordinance, item 6C.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item is related to docket item the board added on the 2022 official development docket. That is item A24. As the board is aware, we are under interim emergency housing ordinance. And that interim emergency housing ordinance has been renewed, I believe, for 5 or 6 times. And the current interim emergency housing ordinance lapsed on December 9th, 2022. The board during the discussions agreed to include this item to make it a permanent. This emergency housing ordinance, the Planning Commission reviewed this item in 5 work sessions on November 17, 2021, July 6, July 20th, August 17, and September 7, 2022. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on August 17, 2022, where they accepted public testimony. And they follow up with a Planning Commission recommendation to the board in 7-1-1, one was absent, to recommend approval of the code with some modifications. Those modifications were outlined to the board, and I believe the board agreed to those recommendations. The board held a public hearing on November 8th to accept public testimony. And at that time, since I believe it was only 2 board members in attendance, the board closed the public hearing. Only the formal action to consider approval of this particular item will be coming later, and that later date is today. So this is a final step in the process in this particular item for the board to consider adopting a resolution amending the Thurston County Code to make the emergency housing ordinance a permanent item in the code. Any questions? I believe Josh is here to answer your question.
And I might, if I may, provide a little bit of clarification as well. What we heard from the public hearing was a lot of general statements about the homeless problem in our region, recognizing that that is an issue. I think it's important to reframe what this ordinance actually is. So it doesn't immediately allow for homeless encampments. That is already allowed for a person that owns a private landowner can have people on their property if they so choose. What this ordinance does is it puts parameters on what those things, the activities that can occur on those lands. So it provides essentially a check for the government, for us, to make sure that people that are setting up homeless encampments are following some level of guidelines. So it's a kind of a difference. The way that it appears looks like it's allowing for homeless encampments, but reality, it's tools in the toolbox for me to be able to assess what activities will be taking place on those properties. And we've also included an additional portion where if one of these permits does get applied for, I have committed to bringing that application in terms of what items may or may not be waived to the Board of County Commissioners. So I just want to make sure that that's kind of more clear. It's not the big overarching issue of homelessness. It is more narrowly focused on what tools in the toolbox my department has to review potential uses on private land, if that's helpful.
But also, I believe before you consider a deviation from the ordinances, the board needs to enact an emergency
That's right.
resolution. So there's a couple of steps associated with this. You need to enact an emergency declaration in order for Josh to exercise this particular items on proposed to you. So, and a couple of steps there need to occur.
And as a sidebar in terms of process of setting this aside, for our staff to not be working on the interim emergency housing ordinance and this on a regular basis is going to free up staff time to work on the docket items that I know that the board continues to have inquiry on. So this, from my perspective, tools in the toolbox, and also frees up staff time to move forward on the other items that citizens are interested in having moved forward. Chris, did you have anything to add?
No delay.
Silent no.
Commissioner Edwards, question?
I just want to make sure my concern all along has been that there's, in any of our activities involving expenditures of tax dollars to deal with this problem, there is still nothing anywhere within this or in our other expenditures that allows us to prioritize our own residents first and give them priority over those individuals that might come here from elsewhere. And you could argue, what is a resident? Is it somebody that's been here a week or 5 years? You know, so that has been my concern all along, that there's not a mechanism in place that we identify and try to take care of our own citizens that have fallen on hard times and actually discourage those to coming here from, I'll just say, Kansas City. So that's my concern. Thank you. I know you've done a lot of work on it.
Well, that concern is completely acknowledged, sir, and you're right. In this permit, we don't restrict who the private landowner decides to allow onto their property. You're correct.
I'm just trying to keep people from coming here. The state, you know, drugs are okay, you can live your deviant lifestyle, so why not come to Washington? I think we need restrictions in place to keep some of those people at bay, where they're at, because we are a very caring and compassionate community. I think people come here and take advantage of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Menzer, questions?
Yes, we had one application under the interim and it was withdrawn, but I seem to remember there being an issue at that time about a crisis versus an emergency, because Thurston County in 2018 passed homelessness crisis, I believe it is. I wasn't on the board, but I believe it was a crisis resolution. And the question was, did that qualify? And County Manager, you said we'd have to declare an emergency. So you're saying we would have to take some additional step that we don't currently have in order to even use this ordinance?
Yeah, that is my understanding, sir. Because the conversation crisis with emergency, it has been discussed quite a bit.
So let hypothetically, let's just say that a bunch of folks were blocking access to the ER at one of the hospitals. And we needed to, even more than what actually did happen, like ambulances couldn't get there, or whatever, and we needed to take action, and this ordinance was thought of as potential avenue for addressing that. Would the board have to have passed some sort of like local, like micro local emergency, in the sense that on Ensign Road, ambulances can't get to the hospital, so we pass an emergency to have to then activate the ability for then Josh to consider an application to authorize a homeless encampment and certain waivers?
That would be my recommendation, and that way we'll eliminate any ambiguity on the language between crisis and emergency.
But would it be, I guess I'm just trying to figure out like how it works. Like so we've declared homelessness a crisis. Let's just say it's still a crisis. It's not an emergency. We've had that debate in other contexts, whatever that means. But let's say crisis is something a little bit less than an emergency. So we're at crisis level. We remain at crisis level. In my hypothetical where ambulances can't get to the hospital, can we declare that little mini situation an emergency, and without saying homelessness in Thurston County is an emergency? No, can we say homelessness as it's impacting Providence St. Peter's Hospital on Ensign Road in 2022 is an emergency that we have to deal with? Do you understand my concern? Because we may not want to be, how targeted can we be in order to activate this ordinance to actually be worthwhile and useful?
I think you can absolutely be targeted, and I think it will be more beneficial. Think about it in terms of when you declare an emergency because of flooding. Is localized, it's just to the point.
Time limited.
It's time limited, so I think you have latitude.
So you feel like that's a pretty reasonable and easy thing to do if we needed to do it?
And moving forward, if the board approves this, I think my recommendation would be for you to be targeted.
And had we proceeded forward a year ago or whatever that was, you're saying that you probably would have proposed such an resolution for us to do.
Hindsight is always 20/20, and sometimes you try to respond to crisis emergency as they move along. But I think this provides that umbrella, I believe.
And then I guess the other question is, if we enact this ordinance, whether or not it's used is another question, but if we enact this tonight, is that going to entail an expenditure of any tax dollars?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I just
Chris
wanted to.
says no also.
All right, I'm good, Madam Chair.
Okay, moving on, thank you.
That's a good question. This is not a mandate, it's an allowance.
Thank you. Moving on to information technology, item 7A, AOC Courtroom Improvement Grant 2022 through 2023.
You had a good discussion last Friday on this particular item, commissioners. And this is an item the presiding judge has been bringing the board awareness of the grant that they received from the Office of Administrative Courts. And the grant they receive is quote unquote to invest on the courtroom of the future. In the courtroom of the future, they highlighted Thurston County as an opportunity to enhance some of the courtrooms that we have here to meet that main objective of the grant. The grant was a total of $250,000. This particular request is for you to consider purchasing of AV equipment, audio visual equipment for room 204 to get updated and upgraded using that particular audio video technology. There's still a little conversation as to how the remainder $150,000 will be spent, and that will be a future conversation as we discussed this past Friday. And I believe Josh Zip is here if you, and also Sherry L, to have any questions related to this particular item.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Judge Allison Zip. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. These two grants, the $250,000, $100,000 is a grant to build a courtroom of the future, and we have the Board of Judges is recommending and has selected courtroom 204 on main campus to be the courtroom that gets that $100,000 invested in it. The $150,000 is a separate grant for AV improvements that would be used to initially make audiovisual improvements in the largest courtroom on main campus, which is main campus courtroom 102. The sound quality in that courtroom can be really challenging, especially for members of the public who are sitting in the gallery. So we want to invest money in ensuring that all members of the public who attend courtroom proceedings in that large courtroom are able to hear clearly everything that is going on. With any residual funds that are available after the upgrades to courtroom 102, we would make other AV improvements consistent with the guidance from AOC on using this for AV improvements to courtrooms both on main campus and at the Family Juvenile Court to spend out whatever residual funds are remaining once we know what that amount will be. We have really been supported in speccing this out by Sherry Ilg and Lisa Corman at the IT staff, and their help has been invaluable in putting these grant applications together, both for AOC and to bring it before you today. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Questions, Commissioner Benson?
No, I've discussed this with Judge Wilson, I'm good.
And no questions for me, thank you. Okay, moving on to Public Health and Social Services, item 8A, waiver of competitive solicitation and contract for Big Brothers Big Sisters mentoring of Southwest Washington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Big Brothers Big Sisters were selected by the Tumwater Hopes Community Coalition. And the Hopes Community Coalition provides young people and within Tumwater, I believe. And the contract for your consideration is for $16,300, and the terms of this contract is from July 1st, 2022 to June 3rd, 2023. Big Brothers Big Sisters have been pivotal in providing the services in the past. It absolutely makes sense to continue with their commitment to provide those services in the program. And that is why we recommend the board to approve the waiver of competitive solicitation and agree to extend the contract for $16,300 for Big Brothers Big Sisters. Okay, Chris?
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you very much. I think County Manager Chavez summarized that very well. And yeah, we are eager to have this partner continue the mentoring services, as well as a facilitation and development of a youth coalition in Tumwater. And it does serve the sort of wider Tumwater School District area of kids and families, in addition to just the city of Tumwater. So thank you. Any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munzer?
No.
And no questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, moving on to item 8B, MOU with Department of Commerce and City of Lacey for right-of-way hotel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This MOU is is related to the acquisition of the Days Inn located in 8200 Quinault Drive Northeast in Lacey, Washington. This has been the result of long coordination with the state, and those goes back to the governor's right-of-way initiative. The intent was to, under this initiative, to help local governments financially, and at the same time, we help the state to clear encampments within the state's right-of-way. So the result of that process required a lot of coordination. I believe we have been keeping the board informed and appraised of the many different nuances of this. The county received, as a region, north of $30 million. Some were utilized by the city of Olympia on the Franz Anderson Road. There were going to be improvement to provide tiny homes, and the biggest investment in this case is to purchase this hotel, I just stated. This MOU outlines the roles and responsibilities between the Department of Commerce, the City of Lacey, and Thurston County, which includes the acquisition of the property, outlines the operations of the property, and also ensure the property is operated and prioritize homeless persons living in Thurston County, because that was pivotal for us when we negotiated this MOU. I believe this is a good document, a good instrument for the board to consider approving. And this particular action authorizes not just approving the MOU, but also authorizing the county manager to sign this MOU on behalf of the county. Jacinda?
Good morning, Commissioners. Jacinda Stelches with the Office of Housing and Homeless Prevention. I'm stepping in for Tom, who is out. I do want to just briefly add, or expand on what County Manager Chavez outlined in terms of placement into the hotel. This MOU does outline a priority of placement and does prioritize those both living in the right-of-way and already essentially living in Thurston County. So did want to touch on that and can go into that in more detail if that is desired.
Okay. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes. Am I to take it there is some criteria about servicing our own local citizens first?
It is, I believe, a criteria that will house those individuals that have been displaced within the boundaries of Thurston County.
Right, but nothing here to discourage them coming from Kansas City to get a free housing situation where others may not offer it, right?
So this MOU is to address the current encampments and the state's right-of-way.
And what about tax dollars from Thurston County per se? Are we contributing on this?
There is no tax dollars from Thurston County.
What is the involvement of Thurston County if it's not financial?
It is the involvement is because we need to work with the provider, Lehigh, and determine the operating requirements with them. And it's a vested interest from the county as well as City of Lacey to make sure that is occurring. And this MOU will be included as an attachment, as appendix on the contract that Lehigh will have with Commerce in purchasing this hotel. So it is pivotal to have those requirements in place.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Munzer?
No, my concerns about this were addressed in the MOU and described last week by staff to my satisfaction, so I'm okay.
Okay, no questions from me. Moving to item C, Department of Children, Youth and Families, Amendment 1 to interlocal agreement, Amendment 22-1173-02.
Commissioners, for your consideration is for you to consider approving amendment number 1. It will bring an additional $1,409,549.55 for a total contract of $2,619,956.10. And the performance of this contract will be from July 1st, 2021 through July 31st, 2023. And this particular contract is related to help to be part of the nurse family partnership program. They will provide services to qualified mothers in 3 counties, Thurston County, Lewis County, and Mason County. The total families that we help under this program is 162 families. As you will well aware, this is a very successful program. This is a service our mothers in need can certainly get access. And Gretchen and her team has done an absolutely fantastic job to make sure this program continues to provide services to those in need. Kurt is here to cover for Gretchen if you have any questions.
Yeah, Kurt Hardin, Director for Public Health and Social Services, Commissioners. I was going to say the county manager did a great summary. I have nothing else to add and here to answer your questions.
Thank you, Kurt. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Mensah? And no questions for me. Moving to item D, Department of Children, Youth and Families, Interlocal Agreement, Amendment 23-1103.
This is also an agreement for you to consideration between the state, the Department of Children and Families, with the county for a total cost of $22,000. And the purpose of this contract is July 1st, 2022 through this July 31st, 2023. This is, as you heard from Gretchen last week, this is a brand new program they would like to implement here in the county. And it's really targeted to provide parents with mental health support during prenatal period, during pregnancy and postpartum period. And so I'm particularly very excited to implement this new program here in the county. And I believe that it's going to be extremely successful for the young mothers and mothers. They will go through and perhaps they're in need to provide those that assistance during that period. And I'm certainly positive if this is successful, the county will continue to invest in Thurston County to provide those services on a continuing basis. Kurt?
Yeah, the county manager gave a great summary, and I have nothing further to add subject to your questions.
Okay. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Mensah?
No, just there's a formatting there.
Yes, we will correct the formatting, Jimmy, the formatting on the actions.
Just the contact from the.
Yeah, I've changed,
And because
updated.
we changed last week, we changed the 22 to 23, the initial number of contracts.
Yeah, we went through this last week, so good.
Okay, thank you for, moving on to Public Works, item 9A, contract award for storm and surface water utility comprehensive study.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a result of the board authorizing issuing a request for proposals to the department to secure the services of a consultant firm. The department held that request for proposals in October 7, 2022. They received 2 proposals to conduct a comprehensive study of the Thurston County storm and surface water utility. The proposals were received and reviewed, and the department is for you to consider approving and awarding the contract to Herrera Environmental Consultant Incorporated from Seattle, Washington, for a cost not to exceed just about shy of $400,000. This has been discussed in the past, and again, this study intends to provide a comprehensive assessment and make recommendations for the management of the storm and surface water utility to provide an equitable program across unincorporated Thurston County and meets the regulatory requirements to meet the strategic goals of the county. Oops. Then we have Nathan Inslee here to answer any questions.
Nate, anything you'd like to add?
I don't have anything to add, but happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menzel?
No.
And no questions for me, thank you. Interlocal agreement, next item is interlocal agreement with the City of Rainier for sport courts amenities.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I stated last Friday, long time coming. The board set aside a $250,000 from the parking by fees for the 2021 budget. And it has taken us this long just to work through some of the requirements with the town of Rainier. And finally, we're here in the position for you to consider approving this contract. And it will be a one-time a contribution to build two pickleball courts, one tennis court, a concrete walkway, picnic table pads, and associated stormwater lighting and fencing related to this thing. The City of Rainier will be managing the planning, design, and construction of this project. And also the City of Rainier will be responsible for the ongoing operations and maintenance after this project is completed. And again, this is a very sizable contribution to the town of Rainier. And finally, I'm happy to bring this forth for your consideration because it has taken us a little while to meet all the many different requirements. Mike, would you like to add anything?
Thank you, County Manager. Good morning, Commissioners. Mike Lohman, Public Works Road Operations Manager. I don't have anything to add, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Sounds like you got an additional job building parks too. No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
No.
And no questions from me. Okay, moving on to item 9C, Interagency Services Agreement with the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife for maintenance of the Boston Harbor restroom and parking lot.
This is an ongoing coordination with the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife. Over the last few years, the state has asked the county to help in the maintenance of the two bathrooms. They're under the ownership of the state and on the boat launch. In the last couple of years, the Department of Fish and Wildlife have upgraded the boat launch, they upgraded the bathrooms, and as well as they upgraded the parking lot in this particular facility. This is again a continuation of this partnership, and for your consideration is to sign an agreement that will cover the years of 2023 and 2024. And the contributions from the state will be $6,000 in 2023, $6,240 in 2024. I believe I had a conversation with the director last week, and didn't to when this agreement, if the board approves, I think we need to have a larger conversation with the state as to the long-term maintenance and the costs associated with that. But at this point, it's a good step forward to continue this partnership and coordination. And Mike is here also to answer the questions.
Mike, anything you'd like to add?
Thank you. Nothing to add, just available for questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, we've had quite a few discussions on this, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Watson?
So where did the $6,000 come from?
Come from the state to the county.
Well, I know where it comes from. Where did that number come from? Did
That
anyone
was-
actually estimate actual cost, or is
That
somebody
was-
just,
That was a negotiated number that we negotiated 3 years ago.
and you're implying that maybe it's inadequate to cover the true cost?
At this point, perhaps not. So we need to build a little more data to present what the actual maintenance will be, considering the upgraded facilities and everything else. So I think we don't want to stop this coordination and the partnership, But certainly as we move along and start maintaining, we'll build enough data to have a larger conversation with the state when the time comes.
I mean, thank you, and I support that approach. My irritation with this is if that number is low, I'm usually all for efficiencies, playing nice with our jurisdictions that we work with in parallel. But in this situation, it is state law that completely hamstrings counties' ability to maintain park staff. Their laws don't allow us to do this, so we should not be cutting them any kind of break on this really, unless they're willing, and again, I know it's in a different department, but at a larger level, it's state laws that don't allow us to adequately resource our parks department. So the idea that we would turn around and cut them any kind of a financial break is rubs me the wrong way.
I appreciate that perspective, Commissioner. And to a great extent, I agree. But again, this, on a step forward was to how we can gather data to state that in fact it's not, perhaps may not be enough.
Like maybe we'll cut them, 10% discount if they'll let us use our park impact fees for maintenance operation of parks, as an example.
Fair enough.
Easy trade.
Fair enough.
Okay. Moving on to item 9D, ordinance creating Patterson Lake Management District number 23.
Yeah, before we went to this item, and I don't know if Commissioner was had the chance to review or listen to the conversation when we reviewed the agenda on Friday. There was another item in here related to Offit Lake. Commissioner Mejia, Commissioner Messer decided to take that item out. And we will be scheduling a follow-up briefing related to that particular item. So I'd like to bring you up to date on that.
Okay, it's not gonna be on today.
There's not gonna be agenda, just want to bring you up to date. That conversation occurred last week.
Okay, yeah.
No, but
I'm aware of it.
But the item that you have in here is for Patterson Lake.
Oh, okay, got it.
So
I see.
please don't cross that out.
Yeah,
We
okay.
do have Patterson, we
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, Patterson Lake is, and this is again a next step in the process. And this is for you to approve creating the Patterson Lake Lake Management District number 23. Now, the next step in the process, and this is the result of holding an election. And on the election, we send out 576 ballots, and 257 ballots were received, just about 44.6% were returned. Out of those ballots, 144 returned yes, which resulted on the weighted votes of 71,334. As you know, when they vote is depending on the land and the size, they weigh on the votes. And there is 113 ballots were returned as a no. If you see the difference between the yes and no, it's not as much. But if you see the weighted votes, significant, because the yes weighted votes 71,334. And the weighted no's 26,067. So this, again, the next step in the process of forming the district. The next step will be, if the board approves, is to bring an action for you to consider setting a public hearing. In that action, I'm working with Tim to bring it up on December 13 for you to considering setting a public hearing where you provide public testimony on the assessment of the fees that those residents will be imposed, and then that will move on. Most likely, the public hearing will be held in January. And I know that you have received, we discussed this on Friday, a testimony from the public that perhaps may consider having parallel tracks. In here, unfortunately, the statute doesn't allow to have parallel tracks. It has to be sequential, and that's the sequence of events that we'll bring to you. Tim?
Good morning, Commissioners. Tim Wilson, Water Resources Manager. I have nothing to add, but would answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards, questions?
No questions at this time.
Commissioner Messer, questions?
I do not have questions on this specific item.
I have a question in regards to an email we got this weekend. And, well, it doesn't have to do with this item particularly, it is connected. We got an email this weekend from the Pattison Lake treasurer. And it was in regards to
It was the potential loan that you may be considering in
Exactly.
2023, right?
Yeah, and so the possibility was, they're wondering if we could consider an extended payment plan for a $100,000 county advance to fund the IVAMP in 2023. So now that I saw Robin popped up, so I kind of wanted to get her perspective on that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Robin Campbell, Assistant County Manager. The state auditor defines interfund loans as, in the BARS manual, it requires that they be short-term, and short-term is defined as no more than 3 years. They say that anything longer than that is considered a transfer of funds. So we would not be able to do a 10-year loan as requested by the Lake Management Committee. The maximum amount of time would be 3 years, and that would have to be with interest.
Can Robin write a paragraph to respond to the treasurer of the steering committee with that information?
I could do that, yes.
That would be useful, I think.
I think so too, just with kind of laying out that
The
information.
restrictions, I think that's probably a good.
Okay. Was that going to be your question, sir? Or was it another?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, you said it was connected to Pattison, so I just wanted to make sure that. No, I misunderstood you, I apologize.
Yep, no, I have no
I
question.
think you're gearing up to the next item on your agenda.
I am?
The administrative rules.
Oh, I just said, yeah, on the specific issue of the resolution, yeah, my questions were about that, the finance part, and about the rules part, but that's not the action item for tonight.
Okay.
And I'm glad you brought that to my attention about, because I didn't see that email, and that's, I'm gonna be consistent, I'm supportive of any arrangement that can be fashioned to help with the financial, but I'm not gonna do a direct subsidy, because that opens a whole nother can of worms that is not gonna be able to be managed from my point of view. So I'm very interested in any arrangement we can work out with Pattison that looks ultimately like a loan or an advance or whatever. So if they want to do 3 years, or if there's some other way to be creative, I'm for that, but that's for later discussion.
Okay, so then we have our standing items, and we have 2 public hearings. So our meeting today will be at 6 p.m. We will have 2 public hearings beforehand that start at 3:30 p.m. The first one, and they are connected, so maybe Jacinda can address them together. Right now, it's a public hearing to amend fiscal year 2016 and 2019 HUD annual action plans, and public hearing of Housing and Urban Development 2021 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are 2 related items, public hearings, and it's required for you to hold public hearings when you are considering amendments to any particular action plan that you have approved. In this case, the first one is to revise the fiscal year 2016 and 2019 of those action plans. And it really goes related to a project on the Tenino area. Through so many reasons, they have not been able to deliver those projects, and by amending those action plans in 2016, 2019, it will allow us to extend and meet the requirements, the expenditure requirements of those 2 plans. And the second public hearing is related to the 2021 Consolidated Annual Report. And this is specifically related to how, explaining how the Community Development Grant Program, CDBG, and the Home Investment Partnership Funds were expended and accomplished those funds and for 2021. And it is a little bit odd because the performance period of this contract is from September 1st, 2021 through August 31st, 2022. And that's where you see this item before you. Jacinda?
Thank you, County Manager. Nothing to add, other than the CAPER, the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, is required by HUD as part of our funding with them. And am here to answer any questions for either of those public hearings.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Evans?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Mentor?
No.
Okay.
And for your consideration, Commissioners, on both public hearings, you have two options. One is to close the public hearing, and depending on the public testimony you might receive, is to go ahead and approve those two items as part of the public hearing. If there's any particular issues related to the public testimony you might receive, we can bring this item later on for you take an action. Just
I may not get back in time for the public hearings, and if that's the case, please don't delay. Go ahead and proceed without me.
Okay. So I don't have questions. Thank you, Jacinda. So that will conclude our meeting agenda for today, which is November 22nd. Now, the meeting for November 29th, 2022, which is next Tuesday, is canceled. And that's because of staffing and commissioners being out of office, including myself. So that meeting for November 29th is canceled. Next, it's 10:33. Let's go ahead before we move on. Let's go ahead and take a 15-minute break and then we can pick up.
thank you.
We are back from break. We left off, it is 11 a.m. We left off with proclamations and awards, and so I'll pass it on to the clerk of the board, Jamie Caldwell, to cover that item as well as advisory boards and commissions.
Good morning. Outside of the proclamation for today that was already reviewed, I don't have any further updates. This will be the last proclamation for the year. For boards and commissions, the standing applications for the Agricultural Advisory Committee, the Housing Authority, the Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board, and the Capital Area Regional Public Facilities District have been included for your review. I'm still waiting for an appointment recommendation from the Ag Committee, but the other two are recommending appointment for all applicants. I've also included a request to review the organizations interested in being appointed to the Criminal Justice Treatment Account as substance use disorder treatment providers, and I do apologize. I realized in the midst of this meeting that I only have one of them listed on your cover sheet, but there are 5. They are Capital Recovery Center, Evergreen Treatment Services, Northwest Resources, Olympic Health and Recovery Services, and Family Education and Support Services. I included the email from Carrie Finnan, who's also on our Zoom call here, to kind of provide some further background information on the request. Outside of any questions, that's all I have.
So I don't understand the criminal justice treatment account. There's like 5 organizations, and are these all reappointments?
No, there was a request that was put in previously, explained in Carrie's email here, that instead of appointing to the OHRS without any further explanation, BoCC asked them to find whether there are local SUD providers who might be interested in the role. They've gone through announcements at meetings and board email distribution, and 5 organizations have expressed interest.
I think there's a little more history of that. If I may, can give the floor to Carrie Finnan, provide additional history of that. Carrie?
Go ahead, Carrie.
Good morning, Commissioners. Carrie Hennon, Public Health and Social Services. Yes, probably a little context. This is a bit of an unusual setup. So again, this is related to criminal justice treatment account. I know when people see me 95% of the time, I'm talking treatment sales tax. This is not treatment sales tax or TST advisory committee, totally different thing. Criminal justice treatment account, these are state funds, fairly small amount of money, $367,000 that come via contract. They are restricted to use for substance use disorder treatment and recovery support services for individuals with criminal charges filed. And this is really not a board and commission the way you traditionally think of your boards and commissions. This is per the statute says, and our contract with the healthcare authority says, that we will have a local planning team that develops a plan, then I bring it to you for approval, then we send it to the healthcare authority. That local planning team by statute, without any action on your part, includes the prosecutor, the sheriff's office, public defense, superior court, drug court, but then it also says, and a substance use disorder treatment provider appointed by the county legislative authority. So that's the piece that we need to fill. In the past, that role was filled by Pierce County Alliance, who is the embedded treatment provider in drug court. And through some discussion, through some staff transitions at that agency, as well as some discussion with those other members of the CJTA planning group, there was a desire to sort of consider other options. I came to you in September and said, everybody thinks, we should appoint Olympic Health and Recovery Services because of the partnership with the county. And the commissioners requested, actually, we should, survey the community. Are there other providers who would be interested in doing this work? It really is sort of one seat on the planning team. So it's great that we got interest from multiple providers, but now you get to decide. So there were 5 agencies that expressed interest. I think I also put in a summary document. One of those basically rescinded their interest because though they work with this population, they are not formally a licensed substance use disorder treatment provider. So that's FESS, Family Education and Support Services. So the 4 remaining on that list are Olympic Health and Recovery Services, Northwest Resources, Evergreen Treatment Services, and Capital Recovery Center. I did have a conversation about this with the other members who by statute are already part of that planning group. So the prosecuting attorney's office, public defense, superior court, drug court, sheriff's office. They all said, you know, all of these providers are qualified, provide great services, have insight into the needs of this population, which is, again, individuals with substance use disorders who are involved in the justice system. They still went with a recommendation of OHRS, given that kind of ongoing close partnership and given the extent to which OHRS is active with that justice involved population, through LEAD, through the chemical dependency program in the jail, et cetera. But they also acknowledged, again, that these are all, you know, qualified providers, each of whom sees sort of a different part of the system, but certainly sees this population. Does that help? A little more background?
Commissioner Edwards?
Do you have a recommendation yourself? And does that recommendation solve whatever problem there was that existed with the Pierce County Alliance? Or, I mean, I don't want to just recreate a new problem if there was a problem. I'm not aware of it.
So, yeah, no, I shouldn't say there was a problem. So Pierce County Alliance, again, is the in-house, is contracted with drug court to serve that population. Because the statute also requires us to include on that planning team Superior Court and drug court, we basically had 3 members of that planning group who were sort of somewhat representing the drug court population, whereas these funds can serve a broader population. Some of them are some of the money is actually earmarked for drug court, but there's, of course, lots of people in the justice system with substance use disorders who are not part of drug court. So it really came as much from drug court as anywhere else, saying, hey, we're kind of overrepresented in this planning team. Maybe we should look at a provider who has more, who's serving people outside the drug court context. So it wasn't a problem. It came along at a time that there was some staffing transition at that agency anyway. So it just seemed like a good time to re-examine it. And then you asked if I have a recommendation. Again, they're all great agencies. To the extent that, you know, OHRS being.
How are we gonna know? I'm curious how we're gonna know.
Sorry?
No, I'm curious how we would know. If you're struggling with it, how are we gonna know? You work with those folks. I don't.
So OHRS very much has, you know, interests that are very much aligned with the county. They are whatever, step siblings or cousins or et cetera. So it feels like a natural partnership. To play devil's advocate, one could say, well, because of that, they are at many of our planning tables anyway. You had asked us to go ask for other providers. If you'd like to say, hey, you know, there's other providers who see a different part of the system and could provide a different voice, I could see that argument. I also, just to kind of go back, we're talking about $367,000 a year. And much of that is already earmarked for treatment courts anyway. So sort of I don't know that this is a decision that should keep anyone up at night.
Commissioner Munson?
So, yeah, I'm kind of on the devil's advocate side because, first of all, Commissioner Edwards and I sit on the board of OHRS, so I want to make sure there's no, you know, impropriety. There isn't in this context, but OHRS is everywhere, doing everything, and I'm just wondering, you know, like, are they eagerly wanting another responsibility on their shoulders, like another, you know, we kind of joked about how this is kind of thankless work in a sense. We sort of joked when we asked you to ask for people, like, oh yeah, they're going to be lining up, and then lo and behold, there's 5 people that wanted to be involved, which I think is pretty exciting, and I would be inclined to maybe lean toward the, you know, OHRS is basically a governmental operation. I mean, we're 2/3 of the board. So if there's private companies that want to be involved and have their voice at the table, that's what's basically a thankless type of, you know, public service committee to be on. I think that's great. Why wouldn't we want to include them, broaden the number of voices? You know, give OHRS a break because they're called on to do everything, just, you know, it seems like to me. And I know all three of these are good organizations. I mean, I've worked as a lawyer and in my previous life as a lawyer, I've worked more with Northwest Resources than anywhere else. So I don't know, maybe I'd lean toward that, but it's just my thought about it. Like OHRS, I guess my question for you, Carrie, is this something like everyone thought OHRS is the right place and they said, okay, we'll do it? Or were they eagerly advocating for their inclusion because they had some feeling that they were the right choice? Or were they just sort of taking it on as being a good team player, as they almost always are?
I think more the latter. I think, yes, being a good team player. I had originally asked them before we opened it more broadly, and, they continue to be willing to do the work. But yes, I think the argument you just made is very valid. They are, like I said, at lots of different planning tables, certainly with the OHRS hat on and with the TMBH ASO hat on, very similar interests as well. So another agency with a different perspective outside of our immediate government sphere, there's definitely a strong argument for that as well.
I'd vote for any of those other three than myself, whichever ones my seatmates would like.
I would go along with that. I think Commissioner Menser laid it out just right. But I'd still like to hear a recommendation from you as to why, because I don't know the groups. I mean, so I oftentimes depend on staff, and you should take it as a compliment that I'm asking for your recommendation. I don't always do that.
Will we get a recommendation from the CJTA?
Yeah, there you go.
They wanted OHRS.
Oh, they want to know.
That's what Carrie said.
So,
They said OHRS, but I actually played devil's advocate with that group and made sort of the argument that Commissioner Menser said and said, well, what if we want a different voice? And their sort of second choice, or if we want a different voice, was Northwest Resources.
Northwest Resources.
Yes, and I would totally support that.
Okay,
You got
so,
it.
okay, so
That was easy.
Northwest Resources it is.
Okay.
And thank you, Commissioner Menser, for articulating my concern better than I was able to do.
Okay, thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Okay, so seeing the advisory boards and commissions, it looks like we got 2 agricultural advisory committee applications.
I'm still waiting on the appointment recommendation from them. I reached out to the staff contact yesterday and she reached out to the chair, but I haven't gotten a response yet.
So they'll probably meet for it, and I believe their next.
Their meeting was on the 17th, so I checked yesterday hoping maybe they had one. And
Okay.
so I don't know if the final decision was made on it yet or not.
Oh, they
haven't
had it
relayed
before that
Yeah,
meeting?
they haven't relayed it to the staff contact
Is your
yet.
cover sheet accurate that there's only one non-farmer seat up?
Yeah.
So the farmer applicant is really not, he's just
Probably.
kind of have to wait.
Probably not, and when I was speaking with them though, that was the preference for this one, because the one for Lisa came in after they had already had their meeting scheduled
Oh.
and gone over and were like gonna be meeting with this applicant, so I'm not positive exactly what their recommendation is going to be. Considering that, I did ask the staff contact to have them review both applications. Her hesitation with it was that they had I believe they had kind of like a, I don't wanna say meet and greet so much, but I believe that some of the committee had at least met with Mr. Huff, and they were vetting him as the strong candidate. At the time, he was the only one, and then the one for Lisa came in. So I asked her to have them vet both of them. They were supposed to review the application, they're meeting on the 17th, but I'm still waiting a response from them.
Okay.
But we think we could, if we wanted to, put Mr. Huff into the non-farmer slot.
I'm not positive,
Sounds
I
like he
mean,
has non-traditional farming.
yeah.
Okay. Any questions or comments on that one?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so for the criminal justice treatment account, Northwest Resources, do we want to go ahead and move forward with that? Well, Carrie, is Carrie still on?
She left.
She left.
She skipped out quick.
Okay, I was wondering when they needed that.
It's not a sense of urgency.
It's not a sense of urgency.
You can probably take it, bring it this afternoon or on the 13th. That would be the next opportunity.
How do you, 13th, work with everyone? Okay, so let's add it onto the agenda of the 13th. So December 13th. Okay, Housing Authority, are we ready to move forward on those?
I am.
Okay, I know this one's gonna be an item of discussion. So Commissioner Edwards, we'll start with you.
We've got 2 appointments, right?
Yes, sir. And Jay Goldstein and Neil McClellan are seeking reappointment.
That's where I'm going, and I'll explain why I'm going that way.
Okay.
Both individuals, very active in the community, very caring individuals, a long history of trying to do good. They know the operation they're involved in, and the board that they're going to be appointed on is recommending, or that, I'm not saying, the board that is advocating for them, the board is advocating for them, that they're applying for. And we've received correspondence on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Menzer.
I am recusing myself as to Mr. Goldstein's reappointment. He was a campaign contributor. And Mr. McClanahan's reappointment, I'm just going to be consistent. I really appreciate his service. I've advocated for this board to have term limits because they're 5-year terms. He's served, I think, 5 terms. There's a lot of interest in this position right now. I've interviewed all of the 4 new applicants. I'm going to support primarily Ms. Vatsky. I would also support Mr. Knox if that made it easier to reach a consensus or a majority. But those would be my 2 selections for that 2nd seat.
Okay. And so for me, I spoke with all of the applicants. And for those seeking reappointments, I kind of let them know where my thought process was at this. I spoke with Mr. McClellan, and he's got a long history of really setting up a lot of these programs that we have today, and definitely appreciate his service. But just in the interview conversations, I was really impressed by Lisa Vatsky and the experience that she would bring to this committee. So she would be my recommendation. Seeing that Commissioner Menzer is recusing from Mr. Goldstein's reappointment, I'll go ahead and just since, you know, Commissioner Edwards, I'll go ahead and do that one as well.
Okay, so it'll be 2 and an abstention for Jay Goldstein, is that right?
Yeah.
And 2 for Lisa Vatsky. So I think that decision is there.
Well, I don't know why it couldn't be 3. I mean, if Mr. McClanahan is not going to get it, Lisa's next, I guess, in line, because Commissioner Menzer said either Lisa or Paul, and I would be okay with either Lisa or Paul. I mean, I would prefer McClanahan because I think he's got the commitment and everything and wants to do it, but if he's not gonna get there, I don't wanna have somebody else feel that, oh no, nobody else, you know, kind of a thing. So I'm just trying to be, welcome people with open arms, you might say. So I'm good with either Paul or Lisa, so it sounds like it's Lisa. Is that right?
Yeah, I was just.
Sounds like Lisa, because you, yeah.
Okay. That's the way it works.
Yeah, she's worked with several housing authorities across the state, so she has experience in working with them.
Okay.
I was just very impressed by her, and
I'm not against new blood. I just think the darn thing is running really well. And I can tell you, Mr. McClanahan has put a lot of work into this.
He has.
When I was sheriff and he was my undersheriff, he put this stuff together.
He did. He was telling me all about it, and I have the utmost respect for him.
Aye.
And I would, you know, if possible, I would like to do like either a certificate or a little plaque for him because of all of his continued.
Certificate of appreciation.
I can tell you, way back when it wasn't even being done before, law enforcement wasn't, they were just concerned about catching bad guys. But with Neil's leadership, we took another direction to try and solve community problems.
So to confirm, the reappointment of Mr. Jay Goldstein, 2 votes, and Commissioner Messer recused himself, and 3 votes for Lisa Vatsky. New appointment. We'd like to see that this afternoon, or we'd like to see that
I don't know, since they.
And I, you know, and I don't, you know, I just wanted to be, I don't mind to vote. If you want to put this on consent, I'm comfortable with that. I don't think I'm formally conflicted. I was just trying to be extra cautious in the discussion, especially, you know, for the election. So I think it'd be fine to have it on, even though I recused myself in the discussion, I think it'd be fine if it was on the consent agenda.
Yeah, I don't.
If that's how you want to do it.
Yeah, I don't think it requires to get a department item because it really is not,
Yeah.
you know, when you exercise individual votes, one way or the other. In this case, I mean, you've been very clear, you recuse himself, but so consent agenda is just agreeing on what his determination is.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a possibility to invite Mr. McClanahan in when we have a certificate ready for him and present it to him.
Yeah, we can work on, maybe for the 13th, that's.
Yeah, because again, just, I was very,
His history is quite complicated, so don't depend on me to give you all the information to get it right. So I hope somebody will put that information together, maybe Jimmy, thank you.
I'll confirm like total term of service, so we have it accurate on that certificate.
yes, thank you.
So to confirm those 2 appointments for the 13th of today.
Well, I'm gonna suggest today because I was seeing that the terms have already expired. And
Okay.
so,
The certificate can be later.
Yeah, the
Later,
certificate can be later.
yeah.
Oh,
That's,
sure.
as soon as the
Resolution, yeah. That's good.
okay, so then those are gonna be today. 11:22. Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board, have we heard back from,
They're recommending appointment for all 3 applicants.
okay,
And they're all, there's enough spots for them?
Yes.
Great. Is that agreed by the board? Okay.
okay.
Would you like them for today as well?
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys got it, but one of my commissioners, District 3, sent me an email about a month ago, just asking us to outreach, and they were really struggling without the extra people, so I think we should get them going if we can.
okay, and that would just leave them 1 position open for District 2 is what I'm looking at. And then Capital Area Regional Public Facilities District.
So they had, Ken Parsons serves as the Thurston County representative on that one, and they are requesting that you guys reappoint him to that. The other appointments that are up for the cities themselves, they will bring forward their own recommendations for those ones, and the cities will appoint for those vacancies. So the only one that they're asking you to take any action on is to reappoint Ken.
This is another one that's served for since
Long time.
2003. I was looking at, but commissioners, how would you like to proceed on that one?
Yeah, I'm good with Ken.
Okay,
Today as well.
yeah, let's rip off the Band-Aid. Okay, so we're having, just to recap, we're still waiting for the Ag Advisory Committee to send us their recommendations for their non-farmer position that is currently open. And we have 2 applicants for that, so more to come on that. For the Criminal Justice Treatment Account, Northwest Resources, and that will be an appointment on December 13th. For the Housing Authority, it will be Mr. Jay Goldstein for reappointment and Lisa Vatsky as a new appointment, and that will be done on today's consent agenda. On the Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board, there is a recommendation to approve all 3 appointments, and that will be done on today's agenda, consent agenda, and then the Capital Area Regional Public Facilities District, a reappointment will be added to today's agenda, so. Moving on to PIO check-in.
Good morning, Commissioners, County Manager, Assistant County Manager, Brian Dominique, Public Information Officer for the Board. Just a few quick updates. We released the 2022-2023 preliminary mid-biennial budget yesterday. That went out via news release. And then I've also been working with Daisy Miranda, our intern, on information about Native American History Month. That's been going on our Facebook page. She's been very helpful with that. And that's about all I have, so.
Thank you. Questions for Brian? Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions?
No, thanks.
And I have a coffee with the commissioner coming up, and that is with District Court. Brian, do you want
to? Yes, so that's scheduled for Monday. I'm still working on the outline now. That'll be done this week. So I'll work with your office on getting that to you. And then we'll be filming that over in District Court, I think in Commissioner Wool's office. And we'll be talking about, so I don't know what the specific name of the program is, but essentially last year during the budget cycle, the commissioners approved for the court to use funds to pay for people who can't afford their release conditions. So if you need like a breathalyzer in your car, you can't afford that, the court can help subsidize that cost. And it keeps people out of jail for
because they can't afford it.
Because they can't afford it. So that's what the episode will be about.
for this grant? And I believe we added kind of like a little note on for coming
Yeah,
years.
there's ARPA funds.
Yeah.
And 500,000 is more authorized. Yeah, good.
Okay.
I look forward to see the numbers on that one. Hopefully we have some numbers.
Yeah, Judge Buckley will be the person we're speaking with. So he should be very knowledgeable.
Okay, legislative update, the county's 2023 legislative agenda. Thank you, Brian.
I'm still working on the final version, so I don't have that for you, Commissioner. So I will make sure that when I have a folder version, I circulate that. I'm working on the language of the shoots. That needs to be added, and also I added language to support some climate mitigation legislation, and I think you received an email from Ms. Beth Folio on that. I'm just adding a language related to that as well. So that's the only changes, but I'm still waiting for.
See you next week, maybe?
Yeah.
Or whenever.
I will circulate
Whenever you
that.
get
As
that.
soon as I get it, I'll circulate it for your final review, and then we'll.
Okay.
Okay. And I believe next week there's a legislative reception dinner. I will not be able to attend that.
When is that? Because I don't think I can.
Wednesday at 5.
30th at 5:30, and this is the shared legislative agenda. I will share the final version with you. Then this is an opportunity for you to meet with the legislative delegation at 6 in the afternoon.
I have at 5 here.
At 5. So Puget Sound Community College.
Yeah, I won't be there because I've got a town hall at the Scott Lake Drainage Community.
How about you, Commissioner?
I think I can make it.
Okay, so
Okay.
you will be, and I will not be able to make it out.
Okay.
I'll attend a conference.
So I'll be your representative.
No, you're the representative of the board. I know. I usually attend with the board of those events, but.
Yeah, you're better off that way. Okay.
Oh, Robin said she will be there.
Okay.
Could you attend?
I can.
Okay.
There you go.
I will be in next week, so. So thank you, Robin and Commissioner Edwards for covering that for us. Okay. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. Moving on to briefing, public hearing decisions pending. There are none. So we're moving to commissioner items. We have 3 major items. The first one
Okay, could I bring one up under briefing public hearing decision pending?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
we don't have anything.
Yeah.
Anything in the works for Virgil Clarkson, Mayor Lacey that passed away?
Yeah.
I know there's an event scheduled for January 7th, I want to say. And
Lacey's organizing that.
yeah.
Yeah, that we might attend or something. I'm just wondering, recognition, we've had an awful close working relationship.
Yeah, I sent a card, but
Over the
if
years,
you wanted to
yeah.
do something as a board, I'd be more than happy to do that.
That's all I'm wondering, just whatever
Yeah,
you
that would
think.
be good. What would you like to do?
I just feel he's such a loss to the community, at least recognizing that somehow. Officially, I don't know, I don't know if you want to get hold of Barb or give her something, or I don't know,
Maybe a recognition
somehow.
for maybe December 3rd, for the December meeting? Does that?
So you want to have a little bit of a script for you to
Or a
recognize?
presentation
Yeah,
section.
some
Yeah.
little
So
thing.
a script?
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
we'll work, I'll work with Jamie on the script.
There was I think the Olympian reported on it and gave a good summary of all the different positions and that'd be a good starting point.
Right.
So when in January are they holding?
The 7th, I believe, and I put it on my calendar so I can tell you. It is, oops. It's at the United Methodist Church on 1224 Legion at 11 a.m. on the 7th of January.
United Methodist Church, you said.
Yeah, at 1224 Legion. I said something,
We may want to add that event to the master calendar.
January 7th.
January 7th.
Thank you. Okay. Do you have that all?
I'm good.
So we'll go ahead and move to commissioner items. First one is LMD administrative rules.
Thank you, commissioners. And I'm gonna go through this document included in your packet. Okay. Yeah, right, you passed it.
What process is that? Health process is that?
No, it's the LMD rule.
That's yours.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, he's got it.
So, a little bit of history, early in the year, you receive a lot of feedback from the LMD's leadership in terms of how we can enhance the relationship between the committees of the LMDs as well as in the county. So early in the year, you requested that it will be prudent and important to start setting up some rules of engagement with how we go about and coordinate the efforts with the LMDs. That resulted on administrative rules developed by Public Works that was shared with the committees. Obviously, it was not well received, and I don't want to revisit some of the conversations you were well aware. Leading to the leadership from the LMDs provided a proposal to you of those rules, I believe in August. The result of that, the board tasked me to bring a proposal. They hopefully blend the two administrative rules, and this is in order to an attempt to move forward and establish those rules. So this is what I have for you. And this is a red line strikeout version of the Public Works L&D administrative rules with incorporations. What I believe is, I think it outlines and addresses most of the concerns, at least from my humble point of view, of the leadership of the L&Ds. One of which I believe they were strongly suggesting this should be labeled as a steering committee as opposed to advisory committee. That has been stated in this version. Also, they have many comments related to the representation and the election of those members of the they will serve on the L&Ds. I believe this version addresses that, takes a lot of the prescriptive requirements or outlines the prescriptive activities the Public Works has, and again, I believe there is soften the language. I think it provides more latitude, and that really is an way to move forward. It talks about the agendas as to how we collaboratively we can probably work on the agendas. Also, Public Works requires the quarterly financial reports. The L&Ds require monthly financial reports. That's included in the revised version. So in a way, I'm not going to walk you through this entirely, but this is the introduction for you to review it. I believe it accomplished a way to move forward on this administrative rules. As we have stated in the past, these administrative rules, however the board wants to approve them, will most likely take effect with the Patterson Lake. Those administrative rules will not take effect with Long Lake and Lake Florence. It's not until they renew their LMDs, if that is the direction of the board. There is a little bit of cleanup work we may need to do if you have the inclination to go with this particular version, specifically related to steering committee or advisory committee. It is the steering committee. We may need to go back to the resolution establishment to amend that, because in the resolution of creation outlines the steering committee, but not here nor there. I believe it's something we can manage moving along. And also, we need to update the FAQs, which is also included in your packet. If the board...
What are the update, what again?
The FAQs, the frequently asked questions.
Oh.
To align all those questions to the new version of the articles. And again, this is the task the board asked me to bring forth, and here we are.
Commissioner Edwards?
What kind of input into this before we get it did the lake committees have? Did you meet with them? Did Tim meet with them and go over any of this?
Well, the direction from the board to me was to bring a revised version. Will attempt to blend the two. If the board wants to direct me to send this version to the committees, that will be a direction that I will follow.
Okay, I guess from my concern, I would think that any group that we're attempting to work with, we would want them to review with staff that they'll be working with, which will be you or Public Works or Tim or somebody, and have those comments also included so that they have time to take a look at it, even though Long Lake and Lawrence Lake say there's not going to be any changes until a new election for an LMD takes place. My concern is that there be adequate input, because they've had some real heartburn, if you will. We've got recent communication, and I think we're gonna have testimony today. I don't know if it's gonna cover all this, because it's quite extensive testimony. Anyway, I just think that we're missing the boat if we don't do everything we can do to work as close as we can with these folks that are trying to solve. I think they're all probably more concerned about the environment and water than we might be, because they've been doing this for years. And so before we get it, although, I mean, we've got it here, before we get it, I think it would be worth having that interaction with that group, with our staff having that interaction with that group. I don't know if that's you or Tim or.
Tim, it will be Tim.
Yeah, so I just think that we should have that kind of discussion with those folks that know kind of the rules. I think for what you've mentioned here, those are a couple of things. It sounds like that solves that issue, but I'd like to make sure. So for me, it's just before we get it, I'd like to have them go over it with staff before we move forward. Rather than us try to go over it now, make adjustments and everything. I'd rather go over the last
Yeah,
the
I'm
last time.
sorry, I'm not expecting you to approve.
No, I know,
Exactly.
I
Just
know.
For me, I'm just delivering the task that you asked me to do.
Okay.
And that's what I'm delivering that today.
Anyway, that's kind of where I'm at.
Commissioner Munster?
I don't really have anything to say about it. Commissioner Edwards' point is fine. I mean, the thing is, this draft, like, they gave input, and that's why we asked for this draft to incorporate their concerns. Now, whether this draft meets those concerns is another question. It's taken a long time to get here, but this is the next step of directly engaging with their feedback. So I'm curious what reaction they would have. I need to go through it a little more carefully myself anyway, so there's time for that. I don't have any problem with sending it to them. I may not agree with their feedback, but I'm certainly willing to hear it. Not a problem.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I need to go through this, and thank you, County Manager, as well as Tim Wilson for, working on these. And I mean, for me, Offutt Lake and Pattison Lake steering committees, when I met with them, they said they agreed with the older versions of this. So, you know, they looked me in the face and they said that they were in agreement with it. And when I met with Pattison Lake Steering Committee, when I went down and they took me around the lake, you know, I asked them again about the administrative rules, and they said that, yeah, they still agreed with them, and they had liked the proposal that, you know, Barry had sent, but again, it wasn't something that, you know, they were going to follow whatever, you know, the board passed. So, you know, I have those comments in mind, but I don't mind sending it over to them.
Just one follow-up on that, on your comment, if I could. And I think, I get the sense from Offutt and Pattison, I guess, is that they were feeling there was such a sense of urgency to kind of get this thing going, that they were kind of, okay, whatever it takes. It's kind of the way I took that, but I'm with you as far as just, yeah, let's get a little input back from, we can look at this too, but send it back to them and let's see what Tim works out with them. He can spend a little time with them and see if, hey, does this fit? Oh, gee, this isn't gonna fit because of whatever, or you didn't think of adding this, maybe. I don't know. I like to have input from the groups we're asking to do things for us.
Well,
That's it.
I'll work with Tim. Tim, you hear all that conversation?
I'm sorry, Romero, could you repeat?
Conversation? I assume you did. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, I heard all of that.
Oh, okay, so let's go ahead and send this out to the leadership, the LMDs, this version.
Absolutely, yes, we can send this out. It was based, as we all know, on the feedback that has been received already. My only concern, I guess, in all of this is that for the onboarding LMDs, Pattison and Offutt, we have been very, very deliberate from the start in our communication to them and establishing what this is that they are considering as they move forward. So the admin rules, the FAQs, all were discussed in detail with them on virtual meetings that remain on the Healthy Lakes website for them to review. And as the resolutions have gone out and as the ballots have gone out to these communities, they refer back to all of this information. So one could argue that a voter for the Pattison LMD that just voted on these are agreeing to a set of rules and responsibilities that may change over time. And that is
Yeah, I have no concerns with anything Tim's saying. I just think it's always beneficial. And I hope there will be personal discussions and interactions, not just by email. I think we lose certain things when everything is by email.
And I'm going to make a suggestion, Tim, if you're having that face-to-face with folks. If we've gotten to a point where you've got a draft here that tried to incorporate some of the concerns they already expressed, if you could sort of, they can do what they want, obviously, but if you could encourage them to kind of work off this framework and say, based on what is here proposed, if they've got to change, could they sort of ground it in this document? Meaning, can they propose a particular revision to what's here rather than drafting an alternative set of rules? Because that really gets really hard to harmonize, two different documents that are structured differently, that are worded differently. If you could encourage the lake management districts to the extent they're going to provide additional feedback to kind of work off this document so that we can really just hone in on where is the rub on a particular provision, and then the board can just make a decision. Because I'd like to get this to the finish line. It's been a long process. I think this is, for me, when I read the alternative proposal of the lake management districts, there was a lot of things in there I thought that could definitely be harmonized or changed or modified, which is why I agreed to this modification. Now, I'll say they had another document about they wanted the board to sign some kind of directive letter to staff. I didn't agree with a lot of what was in there, but so it's not necessarily like I'm just going to agree with anything that comes out of the steering committees, but I do think they had a lot of good comments as respect to this administrative rule document, and I'm very hopeful that we're close. And if we can so I'm trying to if we can winnow down the discussion now and just iron out any remaining wrinkle here so that the board can move forward. And again, as you point out, we need to do that so that the new onboarding districts have a firm understanding of where they're headed. I don't want this to drag on for another few months. So that's my concern, is we just, no problem with anything Commissioner Edwards proposed, but I want to A, move quickly, and I want to B, be very targeted in how we approach the finalization of the draft.
So Tim, could you, when you send an email, you can say, at the direction of the board, that way there's no confusion that whether, this isn't a request from staff, but it's actually a request from the board. And, if they have any questions, they can reach out to any of the commissioners.
Thank you. And I also encourage commissioners to read this. And I appreciate that. So thank you. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Tim. Okay. Next, we have the Mottman Elections Building Project. I've had Mary Ann Clear has joined us though at the boardroom. So let's go ahead and do, Jason, if you'll hold tight just for a little bit longer.
Yes.
And Robin, we'll go ahead and skip to the pretrial department new MOU. Mary Ann, come up.
So I just realized, commissioners, the version that you have is missing page 2. And so I'll give you a whole version
Oh, this one?
of the MOU. But,
Okay.
but they're here, no there, and this is something that I have been briefed for as to what I've been working for literally for the last 2 years, as to how the pretrial services advisory board can be really move into a more policy review, more policy, be strategic as to pretrial services, and get the supervision on the day-to-day activities of the pretrial services department within the whole context, the same context as any other department in the county. It has been a long process, and Mary can attest to the fact that I'm happy to report this MOU addresses and accomplishes that. And although the version that you have is missing a couple of signatures, I do have a version that I will share with you after this meeting that is fully signed by all the partners agreeing to the terms and conditions.
Is that the only thing missing? Is
Yeah.
it just the signature page?
No, it's
It's on page
2. So it's also missing it on the online packet as well.
Yeah, we'll post it, yeah. So anyway, this is just more of an update in how we have come to this point. Mary Ann is here to provide his perspective. But I believe I have been keeping the board appraised and abreast of the efforts that we have embarked, and finally we get to this point. So any questions really related to this particular MOU?
Questions? And Commissioner Mensah, I see your hand up. Go ahead, sir. And then I'll get you.
So I understand that it has Mary Ann then reporting not to this committee. Is the committee dissolved?
It moved into be the policy and goal advisory board committee.
But her direct report is to you?
Yeah.
And are there other elements here in the missing page?
I know it just outlines a little bit more.
You had mentioned at some point, and Mary Ann's sitting here, so, but you'd mentioned at some point that we may need to adjust her classification of some kind because she'll be in a slightly different HR status as a direct report to
And
you.
that is already you made some initial decisions on the budget for 2023
I
that
remember
addresses that. And that's
not a piece of this.
No, I was aligning those two elements as we move along, so finally I think we're coming to the same point.
Okay, so this is really just structural?
Yeah.
Okay.
Questions? Commissioner Adler?
No questions.
I think this is a long time coming, and I'm happy that we finally have something in front of us. Mary Ann, is there anything you'd like to add? Any comments about the MOU?
I would just say it's been a lot of work and a lot of conversations amongst all of the governing board members. There has been 7 offices and departments that have been working on this. It actually has been a little bit over 2 years, I believe, that everyone has been putting some time and energy. A lot of thought went into the document to become a consensus amongst all of the governing board members when we first started addressing this topic, which is separate than what Commissioner Mensah had just asked about. So I believe that this will bring a level of consistency for the pretrial services director position and department, and it's a step forward for this department. So I appreciate all of the work that went into the document.
I'm printing a new version as well, I'll just read that. And if anything, I think there is an opportunity, I believe, to see how the pretrial services department evolves in the future. Sure. There are many opportunities that lies ahead.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and take a look at the new MOU. When is this going to come back in front of the board, Romero?
There is not a need for you to take an action. This is just to bring you up to.
Just informational,
Yes,
okay.
informational. Because under the, you authorized the county manager to sign the MOU a while back.
It's really weird. I'll fix it, pass it out. Okay,
That's all I have for you on that.
I have just,
go ahead.
so whenever we do something new, is there a measurement of success that we're striving for? And how, maybe we won't have anybody in jail for long. The jail budget will be reduced substantially.
That's a high bar. I always we need to strive for that, I believe.
Well, when we started changing things in the juvenile justice system some years back, we ended up
But I
quite
think the
successful.
the immediate measure of success, and I can probably give it forward to Mary Ann, is really streamline the operations and activities of the director. And that's probably the first measure of success that you may see.
I have another question in regards, because I know how the pretrial department was set by a resolution from the board. Do we need to amend that resolution that was initially passed with this MOU? No?
We reviewed that resolution, it's just the formation of the pretrial services department, which is still in place. It's just on the resolution outlines the need of an MOU with partners, which it was done, now is the revised version of the MOU. So there's not really another legislative action.
Okay.
And the governing board still exists, they're just shifting from a governing board to a policy oversight committee. And so they're still there and there's still going to be a collaborative, hopefully, in an adversarial system. We'll still be working together, discussing the way the pretrial services department works and how it operates, what the policies are, because pretrial services, to Commissioner Edwards' point, does impact the entire criminal justice system.
Sure.
And so we'll all still be coming to the same table and looking at how we can better do business and impact our county.
I really didn't expect you to solve it all within the next 6 months.
But that's the goal.
But really,
Continue all your good work, that's what I mean.
I believe that is a great step forward.
Providing some consistency is a step forward.
Great, thank you. Any further questions, comments? Thank you, Mary Ann.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Robin, Jason?
Got 2 minutes.
You have 3 minutes.
Commissioners, I may just to open the conversation, this is a follow-up to the project that the board authorized.
Thank you.
At least to continue with the engineering. What we call is building 1, or the Mudman complex. Building 1 is the elections building. Again, the board authorized just the preliminary engineering. Here is going to give you a perspective of a little more tangible how much it's going to cost the construction. At this point, we don't have any avenue to provide to you, any options as to how you can consider funding the construction. But I think it's a good point of check-in point to bring up to date the efforts related to this particular project. Robin, Jason, like to add anything else before we get into the details?
Good morning, commissioners. I'll go, I guess. In front of you, I think you guys have the AE's engineer cost estimate. As Romero stated, you guys had approved full design, and we're at around 75% of design currently. I reached out and asked for a cost estimate, and as you can see, the cost was originally around, during the PDS, was around $3 million. And due to multiple things, increases in scope, additional HVAC equipment needed due to the layout of the offices and the area, and also escalation at this time. As you're all aware of, projects have increased in cost quite a bit. So currently with permitting and PM time, all the soft costs, we are currently looking at a AE estimate of $4.7 million. So
Thank
And I'm
you.
here if you have any questions.
Okay. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Oh, just wow. For now, wow, I guess that's considerably more when we stepped into this adventure.
Commissioner Munster?
When it says increase in scope, what does that involve?
The auditor, working through the process with the auditor, there's been more offices added, more electrical security system expansion to accommodate the future use of ballot processing equipment.
Okay, but if the choice is nothing happens or less happens, are those items that the auditor could revise her thinking about scope?
And that will be a good conversation to have with the auditor.
I don't know how much money we can wring out of what we were, let's just say we had 3 million, because that's what we thought it was gonna be. Maybe we have 3 million to do whatever work 3 million pays for.
I don't know that at this point, at least from the staff level, Robin can corroborate, we don't have an option for the 3 million either.
What happened to the 50 million? I thought the 50 million was supposed to cover that building too.
No, 50 million is for this campus.
Commissioner Edwards? Sorry, I interrupted.
Is there, or was Commissioner Mentor?
No, I'm done. Go
I'm
ahead.
so sorry,
No,
I kind of jumped in.
Is there a possibility, I mean, elections are, quite a sticky topic, not only here, but everywhere. And we've got a presidential election coming up in a couple of years, and I think it's gonna be on the top of everybody's minds, trying to get the best system in place we can possibly get in place. Might there be money coming, almost like CARES money, maybe, coming towards solving elections? Anything that Mary could fill us in on, that she's probably on a national board at least, that has some input into that type of decision-making. So, I mean,
So Mary
this doesn't
has
have to
been
be
working.
money. What was that?
Mary has been working at the national level and was very hopeful that we would see funding for elections at the federal level, but nothing has materialized. So we continue to seek grants. We're reviewing some of the recent federal legislation regarding construction on essential buildings to see if that's a grant that we could be eligible for, and if so, we'll apply for that. We are looking under every rock for funding to move forward with this building. Also, Commissioner Menser, to your question, we could certainly have a conversation with Mary about, whether or not she'd be willing to revise any of the scope, but I know that this was already somewhat scaled back from their what they really want. And Jason, you could add to any of that.
Yes, I've had conversations with Mary, and we tried to limit the scope of what she felt was actually needed for the upcoming presidential election. And to answer also and follow up on Robin's comment, we have asked for, and you may see it in your packet there, for line item pricing. So if some funding does come available, we can sit down with Mary and go through what's the highest priority and try to scale back the project even further if need be.
If we didn't have the 3 million originally estimated, why did we buy a building down the street?
We really thought at the time, I believed at the time that we would have funding. But with the downturn in the housing market, we are not generating as much REIT as we expected at the time of the purchase. We also are just starting to get estimates on the courthouse campus. We'll have updates on that for you early January, not a little sooner, but the combination of increased costs and less REIT revenue has put us in a position to not be able to afford some projects that we hope to be able to do.
So there was a point at which Commissioner Mejia thought that we were gonna include Mottman underneath the umbrella of the $50 million bond was part of that, and now it's not because costs are escalating here. I didn't understand that to be true.
I don't think that it was ever part of the 50 billion, because we knew from the start that that is not enough to do just what we need on buildings 1 through 7. But I did think that we would have a little capacity in REIT to do a few more projects, including the Mottman projects.
So we're not asking for direction at this point. It's just to bring you up to date in terms of the costs. We will continue with the development of the engineering phase. And we will continue to find a way as to how we can bring back recommendations. So how you could potentially fund. So we'll continue through that process. At this point, I'm not asking the board to say yea or nay on anything. It's just bring you up to speed.
Can we make a capital request to the legislator? Is that a possibility?
Certainly could.
Yeah, we could.
Well, then why don't we add that to our, I mean, if that's, you know, okay with the commissioners, we can add that to our legislative agenda and ask for a capital request on this. Commissioners?
Yeah, I mean, well, do anything. To me, we just don't have it, it doesn't sound like. That's what I'm wondering about. Do we do nothing and just have an election the way it's been? Or do we take away from something else? You know, whether that be made something here, a building here, or whatever it might be. I'm just wondering how to make it all balance. I mean,
Well, my concern is, you know, last presidential election, she was able to make it work because she was able to get funding for the SPSEC and, you know, have that expanded, but, you know, that's why she was kind of requesting before this next presidential election to have that expanded room so she could have the 2 machines up and running. She can have all the equipment ready to go. So I would rather knock on every possible door that we have. And if that's one of them, like, I'm just,
Well, I mean, I don't know how, I don't have a good sense of, I'm sure every county has something they could point to that they need money for a capital expenditure. I mean, I know elections are important, but every county in the state runs elections. So I'm just not sure if I don't want to make that request if it's dead, there's no possible way. But if there's some way that we weasel that into somebody's, you know, into the state budget, I mean, if there's a path forward, I'm supportive, but.
I guess I'm looking for what's unique about Thurston County.
Yeah, what's unique
The
about
other
it.
38.
Stuff related to the Capitol campus, you know, I think we can always advocate for that because we serve the whole state of Washington. But to run our elections, like, doesn't put us in a unique position. We didn't face any unique, you know, we didn't have an earthquake or a building failure that compromised Thurston County in a special way. I'm just not sure how we advocate for that at the state level.
I can certainly, I will follow the direction of the board, and if you'd like to include it on the legislative agenda. But that was my first reaction. What is this request unique to the legislature? And as you know, the Auditors Association has asked for funding for elections for a long while in the past legislative sessions, not just for capital, but overall. I can probably touch base with Deborah Manguia to see if there is any avenue, if she sees this an opportunity, and report back, if the board likes to do that.
I'm looking more towards the federal infrastructure business or something that, you know, everybody talks about elections being a big deal.
See, that might be an option to explore. And
We're still counting votes.
Oh, well, yeah, but aren't we done?
4,000.
And the big infrastructure building may be an opportunity. That's what it's give us time to go through that process. And in fact, I know the Robin is working on bringing a proposal to hire a consultant that can help us really start looking at the potential grants within the infrastructure bill. And that is really, this will be one of those options if there's a possibility.
And Robin, is that some of the consultants you spoke with at the NACO conference or
No,
options?
actually, our bond advisor, PFM, has a branch that does this type of work and are developing an expertise in the federal legislation. So I'm working with them to see how they could help us out.
So more to come, Commissioner, more to come. And I don't want to wait until, the edge and bring you a shock of the estimate. I want to make sure that you are tracking on where we're going, what we know. So more to come.
Okay, it is 12:11 p.m. Are there any commissioner items?
There's one other issue. I don't know if you guys, this letter was addressed to me from Washington County's insurance fund. Maybe because I'm on the risk committee. Did you see this, Romero?
Yes.
I did not.
And they're looking for a member from Thurston County, looks like, to participate on this board. You got any input you want to put into that?
Yes, on December 9th, I have a planning session where you will be considering the assignments for boards and commissions for next year.
And that's where
I'm
this,
going to be bringing this, and I'm going to be bringing another board that you heard from Eric Johnson as part of that. So 2 new ones that you may want to
okay,
discuss.
I mean, I just wondered if.
I didn't
see that yet.
Okay,
I'll take a
I
look.
guess it's coming, right?
Can I throw one issue
Since I
out?
can't give it to you.
I'll give you a copy. I was made aware of that email, so I'm tracking. So I was not included on that email, but I was made aware of that email.
Okay,
But I'm tracking.
Okay.
good enough.
Okay.
Real quick, so I'm sure you guys heard about the Rochester fire levy had failed, which means they're planning to have to close certain offices. There's a concern, we've had this conversation over the last 4 years, probably before I even got here, about tribal calls at Great Wolf and what that cost is. Now, my understanding is that there's, I don't know the history of it, but I was told that Lacey had worked out something, like they were in that same boat and they worked out an arrangement with Red Wind and the Twali tribe on that. I know we've had that conversation with Chehalis in the past, it hasn't led to very much fruit, but given that, number one, their service is going to be severely impeded by the fact that the failure of funding is going to cause the closing of fire stations.
More than impeded,
Number two, there's a new tribal chairman at Chehalis who I'd like to meet. I think the board should discuss. This might be a conversation that is ripe to be reopened in terms of, because my understanding from what I've heard at one of the meetings I was at is that the gap is like, I can't remember the numbers they had. It was like they get tens of thousands from the tribe and they spend hundreds of thousands in response, in service calls. And so somehow closing that gap so it could help the fire departments not have to close, because the tribe will suffer. The tribe now has a stake in this, I would think, because they are going to suffer not having the response based on the fact that this levy didn't pass. And there's some concern in the community that it didn't pass because of, folks in the community feeling like they're not.
We're getting a bum deal.
Yeah, it's not, there's an equal contribution across, for the services that basically, that there's in a sense subsidizing tribal service. I don't know if that's true, but those numbers I'm sure could be crunched. So anyway, just wanted to ask the commissioners, if there's in the county manager, if you think there's an opportunity to, or what would be the best way to address this?
Seems like
Well, no, I was gonna say, because in that same sense, it would be great to we meet within the Nisqually tribe on a quarterly basis. It would be great to meet with the Chehalis tribe as well and the Scoxon tribe if they're open. on either quarterly or bi-yearly or just something.
We had a lunch with them, I think, before you were on the
Yeah,
board.
we used to have those, but
Anthony
the
was.
pandemic just threw everything out. So I think it's
Yeah,
great.
the
Yeah,
epidemic
just-
did throw.
Yeah, I think we need to go back. I think we used to meet, host, lunches. I think it was great. And through the conversations with, at least since I've been here, through the many different board of county commissioners, the fee for service has been part of that conversation with.
Well, I mean, it's not that hard, but it's somewhat hard to go and say, give us more money, you're not paying us enough. But now it's different to say, look, this is all, there's nothing we can do. These stations that serve your properties, your lands are gonna close. So is there a way for us to find a compromise that gets us all where we need to be, which is them a little bit more support and you the service that you need?
So I think you recall, and you may also recall the conversation that we had on the fee for service. And the fee for service, it was not just about the fire response, it was sheriff's response, even to the point of as to how much the prosecutor's office spent on cases generated within the reservation. And through the many attempts, we didn't have somewhat of a warm welcome. And in fact, internally, we went through an extensive analysis of the fee for service that we can provide actually numbers. And we provided that maybe, you think 3 years ago, 4 years ago, Robin, that we went through that analysis internal for the fee
Yeah,
for service?
I think the most recent iteration was about 4 years ago.
But
we've
never
done
was
we've
that.
done it at least 3 times.
Right, but now this time, the service is closing down. Like that might change the calculus for them.
So
I mean,
that was for
they're getting a good
the
deal.
fire.
Why would they agree to pay more if they're getting why pay for the cow or whatever that saying is? But now they're not gonna have the cow. I forget.
So I will say that our analysis never included the fire districts because those are separate jurisdictions.
Yeah.
And any money coming to the county would not go to the fire districts. I think that for the fire district, their best option of recourse is to have a separate negotiation with the tribe. I suppose that we could do something joint with the fire district, but
Maybe you need our help with that.
Well, why don't we do something joint then? I agree with that because at the end of the day, I feel like if something like this happens, it's gonna come and end up with us anyways. And the complaints are gonna end up with us. Like, I'm just being realistic. And so if there's a possibility where we can have this joint meeting and, kind of let the Chehalis tribe know that, yes, the county's kind of like, we're seeing this concern and it would be good for all of us to have a conversation about the impacts that it's gonna have on the community.
What's the solution?
And talk about a solution, yeah, so I'm in agreement with that.
We'll work on it. Go ahead.
we certainly can work on that. I would also remind the board that the county does receive a payment from the Chehalis tribe. It is for the casino, not the Great Wolf Lodge. So all of the analysis we've done up to this point has been around the Great Wolf Lodge and that area in Grand Mound. Because we receive under the state gambling compacts, a payment of, I think it's 0.5% of the gaming profits. I'd have to go back and look and see exactly what the percentage is and how much the county receives every quarter.
And sometimes it's not very.
It's not that much, the county.
It's not very much, and
Probably less
it
than
is
10,000,
specifically, in accordance with our compact, it is specifically for support of the sheriff and emergency management.
And is there a casino in our county? Or is it in Grays Harbor?
It's in our county.
In our county.
It's
right at the line.
On the line,
But it's in our-
the access road, the access on the west side, that's half Grace Harbor.
Yeah, you're driving down the access road, you're in Grays Harbor for a minute.
Yeah.
And then when you're coming back out, you're in Thurston.
It's
It's right on the county.
Oh, okay, that's why I think that, because when you turn, you're in Grays Harbor. I didn't realize you go back into Thurston. Okay.
So now that we're talking about the Chehalis tribe, I have a question about the road. And what, I haven't heard back, like, is there an update?
The donation of the roads?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't we send them a letter?
We did,
Yeah,
but
we did send them a letter, and the county engineer is working on revising local agreement.
We didn't
Okay.
send it.
No, we did. We did send the intent, but let me double check with Public Works to see where they are on the revised in local agreement, because I believe we sent the same in local agreement back. Okay. Let me take you back. This is probably almost 9 years in the making. 9 years is the same request. 9 years we went all the way to having an interlocal agreement in place. We sent that interlocal agreement for the review and they didn't like some of the conditions within the local agreement related to the sovereign authority. Early in the year, we received another letter. Asking the same thing. We got a briefing with the board and you asked the board asked to send the same local agreement to get their feedback.
Right.
So
Did we ever get a response to that?
I have not heard, but let me double check with public.
okay,
On the trouble thing.
yeah.
To Commissioner Mentzer's point on this whole response through the fire folks, insurance is going to be a heck of a big issue for the tribe down there where they've got that hotel and casino. With no fire response, their insurance is gonna go crazy. I don't know what it'll be, but
Yeah, I'm just thinking we'll have additional leverage in that
I mean,
conversation.
it is gonna be.
Given the failure of the vote.
If anybody knows a insurance person or something, you might ask them, what's your insurance on a multi-million-dollar place when you don't have fire coverage? But it is really gonna skyrocket, I believe.
Sounds right.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll organize a joint meeting. Obviously will not be this year. Takes some time.
no.
So it will take a little time. We'll work on set up that.
Thank you.
So, yeah, two lines, set a joint meeting with the fire chiefs and Chehalis tribe, and then maybe in the future set quarterly, bi-yearly meetings with just the Chehalis tribe, kind of like we do with the Nisqually tribe, and just give each other updates. I think it's just good partnerships to maybe restart that.
One thing that's gonna take place now, there'll be also insurance rate adjustments on individual homes down there. It's gonna actually probably cost in total more money than the bond issue
And actually
cost.
supporting the bonds. Yeah. I think that
Probably
was-
will, but they don't ever know that, until that's kind of off in the distance and then but so once they start getting some bills, there's gonna be some people talking a different tune, I believe.
Interesting. Well, and this is one of those things in my,
I was down there trying to help you on that issue.
I think you can resolve. This is an area where I'm hoping the 5 commissioners can help. We have such trouble getting their whole council and our whole council coordinated and all that, but maybe the individual commissioners can develop those relationships, have those meetings more frequently, and then we have those lines of communication, and the new District 4 commissioner can be in touch with the Chehalis. I'll work on my Squaxin Island, connection. Commissioner McGee and I will have that connection, and Commissioner Edwards can be point on the Squally, and it might be easier to develop those, because personal relationships matter so much, to develop those and have those more frequent points, because these things are hard to manage council to council, just because of the schedule and how the council works.
Personal relationships with tribal entities are 10 times more important than corporate interaction.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, because when I saw the results of that proposition, yeah.
Well, I started to hear,
That's
was
what
it
it's-
steady? I
Steady.
can't remember, but
Yeah.
somebody, they were talking about the impacts.
How I concluded what storm is coming,
Yeah.
and there's no way to stop it.
Tenino Mayor, he also talked to me about it. He's a firefighter himself, so he offered his assist, if he can assist us in any way in the conversation, that would be useful, because down there and having that experience directly, he can speak directly to the impacts that are likely to result, so that'll help us. And again, opportunity with a new tribal chairman, I wanted to meet that person anyway.
I was
So-
surprised it was a new chairman myself. I just came across a picture.
I didn't hear anything other than seeing an announcement. So that's-
Okay, we'll work on setting up that meeting as soon as feasible.
Our December 9th planning session, are we gonna have some material that we might get a little early on that particular meeting? Are we gonna get things ahead of time?
I think what I'm tracking is more a discussion.
Oh, okay.
Cal, you might tell Commissioner Edwards what you, remember
So-
I kind of asked you about what elements of the five
So
commissioners?
what I'm thinking is obviously, in terms of documents, I'll bring the current assignments for the boards and commissions. And that will be a discussion, how you'd like to, in addition to those two. Then the next of the conversation is start thinking, not this session, but start having a brainstorming session as to how the five commissioners will work. And the idea is that I will present it to you, it will be somewhat of a committee representation. And the committee representation is not the outside committees, it will be more internal committees, where two commissioners will be assigned to committees. For instance, will be a land use committee, or a public works committee, or a law and justice committee, or whatever elements of the business of the county will be, and that's the conversation I'd like to have with you. At least two commissioners will be sitting in there. And those commissioners will be the ones who get a little more in tune, more detailed to the nuances of those elements. And the result of this conversation, they will be formally provide recommendations to the full board for approval, whatever that is. That is the idea. Also, the other idea will be how much is the role of the chair of the commissioners, the way it is good, or there's an opportunity to assign other responsibilities within that context. And third, what I'm going to be bringing, and I can probably send that ahead of time, is developer has a code of conduct. I think it will be good for the board to set that when the other two commissions are coming. And this is, the proposal that I will bring to you is not gonna take any legislative authority from you, that's not the intent. It's just to really set what I call rules of engagement to provide a civil engagement among the board members. So, and that's what probably and I can probably give you a copy of the model that I'm not suggesting that is gonna be it, but perhaps a model for you to have an idea as to.
Yeah, we shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel on this.
No, so it's a model, there's many models, there are many jurisdictions, they have approved code of conduct for legislative authorities. And so that's pretty much the bulk of that December 9th meeting. It's more a brainstorming session among yourselves.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Anything else? It is 12:28, we are adjourned.